Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Los Angeles City Council. Today is Wednesday, April 19th, 2006, and we are in a regular scheduled meeting here at City Hall in room 470, also known as John Ferraro Council Chambers, on the third floor of City Hall. We invite all members of the public here to testify on matters that are either agendized for public comment or for general public comment. And we also invite people who are closer to Van Nuys to use our remote facilities through Van Nuys City Hall, where we can listen to your testimony via a remote hookup, and we can take your public testimony there. We also would like to invite folks to watch us on Channel 35, which is LA City View, your channel. We have a live showing of the council proceedings each Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's rebroadcast in the evening. And for those not close to a television, you can watch a live webcast at www.lacity.org, the city's homepage, where there's a wealth of information about your city's government, the city council, and the various departments of the city, and help with some of your neighborhood concerns as well. And lastly, you can call in on council phone, which is at 213-621-CITY, and you can listen to the proceedings on telephone of either the City Council or our committee as well. We need 10 members, or 2/3 of our 15-member body, to constitute a quorum and begin our meeting. I want to thank publicly Council Members Gruhl, Councilmember Hahn, Councilmember Labange, Councilmember Perry, Councilmember Rosendahl, Councilmember Zine, and we are awaiting 4 more members to have a quorum. So I'd like to ask Councilmember Parks, Councilmember Cardenas, Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Reyes, Councilmember Weiss, Councilmember Wesson, Councilmember Huizar, to please come down as quickly as possible so we can begin our meeting in a timely manner. Thank you. As soon as we have 10 members, we will have a quorum and we will begin. Thank you again to Council Members Gruhl, Hahn, Labange, Perry, Rosendahl, and Zine for being here timely. We still are waiting Council Members Cardenas, Councilmember Huizar, Councilmember Parks, Councilmember Reyes, Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Weiss, and Councilmember Wesson. We have about 5 minutes more before we will adjourn. Mr. Wesson. We are now at 7 members. Still awaiting Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Huizar, Mr. Parks, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Weiss. Please make your way down as soon as possible. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Gruel, Hahn, Weezer, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Smith moves, Mr. Wesson seconds. If there's no objection, that'll be unanimous vote, so ordered.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Ms. Gruel moves and Ms. Hahn seconds. If there's no objection, that'll be unanimous vote, so ordered.
Mr. President, do you wish to take up public comment at this time?
Let's hold that on the, well, actually, yeah, let's dispose with that first, actually. We have 2 cards for public comment, Zuma Dog and Matt Dowd. If you'd like to come forward, you got 2 minutes. Welcome to City Hall.
Right now?
You're on right now.
Yeah, Uta Gleeten Glouten Gloten, y'all. I got something to say. I'm here representing all the artists of Venice Beach. My name's Zuma Dog. I'm a public advocate. You can watch my TV show. You can find out all the injustices happening in Venice tonight. Comcast, 10 p.m. public access. Adelphia, 11:30 p.m. on the public access. Make sure you tune in. What's happening is they have stripped off all the incense, jewelry. Hey, this mic's not loud enough, y'all. This mic's not loud enough, y'all. They stripped away all the incense, jewelry, and all these religious items off the beach because they're trying to build a shopping plaza, run the 90 freeway into West Washington Boulevard, and they got to get all the artists off. Now, here's the only problem. Since I'm not allowed to sell T-shirts, I decided to be a performer. I signed a contract with the city. You're allowed 50 feet of amplification. Hey, I'm talking over here. Please pay attention, y'all. Anyway, I'm allowed 50 feet of amplification to perform on Venice Beach. With the contract I signed and paid a lifetime membership. So I was performing this weekend on the beach. A store across the way complains, well under the 50-foot limit. So the police comes over to me and he says, hey, I want you to turn your stereo down if you could, because I had a complaint. I said, well, that's all well and good, but I'm well within my 50-foot range. He says, sir, I know you're under the volume, I understand that, but I'm asking you to turn it down anyway, because if you don't, we'll just find something else to get you on. You hear that, y'all? I was doing something legal. A police said, I know you're being legal, but if you don't stop, I'm going to find something else to get you on. I hope they're getting a better democracy in Iraq than we're getting over here, because I hope my homies ain't dying in vain, y'all. Because then I said, well, if I can't perform, then I'll just protest the store that filed a complaint. They sell leather items, and that is animal cruelty and killing, y'all, and I'm an animal activist, y'all. So I said, well, if I can't perform, I'll just protest the store and say, you know, don't buy this stuff here. And he said, well, I appreciate that, and you are allowed to do that, sir. But if you do, we'll just find something else to get you on. Don't tell the police to tell people that they're going to get you on something else, y'all. That's called terrorism, and I don't want to be terrorized by the police, y'all. Zuma Dog, hootie-hoo, and I will always love you. I got a dope falsetto like Whitney Houston, y'all. Watch my TV show tonight, Comcast, 10 o'clock. Adelphia, 11:30. Get better democracy in America than they got in Iraq, y'all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dog. We now have Matt Dowd is our next speaker. Mr. Dowd.
Thanks for having me. Sorry I missed yesterday. You know, I hate to take a day off work, but you know, unforeseen circumstances kept me from being with you. I know they're building in the 90 freeway into Venice. You know, that's obviously to accommodate whatever the construction and development and everything, but I've got a contract, well, it's an agreement with the city to be allowed to sell my incense. All the people out there, they know who I am. I'm the guy who has the pink incense with the Victoria's Secret in it. It's the only one like it. I'm not a commercial vendor, but I'd like some time to become a commercial vendor. And if you're closing out Venice for people like me and all the jewelry people, they make their own jewelry in the space. We're just like the elephants. We just want to be left alone to just forage in the jungle of Venice and make a living. We don't need the city to come in and, like, I'll get arrested if I go sell a $1 pack of my incense. And people come to Venice to find it, and they know who I am, and they, you know, all I want is a little bit of time, maybe, you know, like 3 or 4 years, it's like, because I got a lifetime permit. It was for life. So I'm willing to make a deal, and Bill Rosendahl, he doesn't want to listen. I've written to his office. They keep telling me, you know, we're going to deal with your submission, and they've lost the video I submitted. You know, all we want is a little bit of time to acclimatize to this new thing even. You know, just to wipe everybody off the boardwalk. It's insanity, but that's what they're doing. We've got shows going out on Comcast in Adelphia. Anybody wants to know, just switch into your public access information channel. We'll tell you what's going on.
Thank you very much, sir.
And free the elephants.
Appreciate
Food.
your testimony.
Free the elephants.
Thank you. All right, that closes our public comment for today. We can run through the agenda, please.
Mr. President, before beginning the regular agenda, there has been a request to refer item 1 back to the Audits and Governmental Efficiency Committee.
Okay, is there any objection, colleagues, to referring number 1 back to Audits and Government Efficiency? If not, so ordered. Next items, please.
There's also been a request to refer item 18 back to the Plum Committee.
Is there any objection, colleagues, to referring item 18 back to the Plum Committee? If there is none, that'll be unanimously ordered. Next item.
Items 2 through 17 are items for which public hearings have been held. Item 2 is a commission appointment. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Yes, let's hold that on the desk, please.
That would leave council items 3 through 17.
Okay, colleagues, 3 through 17, Mr. Labange.
Ask item 16 be called special with a 10-minute public hearing on both sides.
10 minutes for each side or total? Sorry.
I think 10 minutes for each, depending on how many cards you got,
Okay.
Mr. President.
All
If
right.
you have a few cards, you could...
Great,
your
I'll go
decision.
through the cards in a second. Number 16 is called special. Any other specials, colleagues? Any other specials? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, on the balance of the roll, let's open the roll and close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 19 through 41 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes
And
are
I'm
required
sorry,
for
I should have said the
consideration.
ordinances, of course, will be carried over, or those second readings, Mr. Clerk? Mr. Clerk, are those the ordinances that went?
Yeah, there are ordinances on 3 and 4, and they will go over 1 week.
They will go over 1 week. Okay. Yes, Mr. Labange?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, a request of Councilmember Parks to hold on the desk 6 and 17.
6, we'll have to reconsider if we do that, and 17
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
as well. We'll come back to that after we go through these other items.
Thank
next
you.
time. Sure, thank you. Which items are before us, Mr. Clerk?
Right now, you have items 19 through 41.
19 through 41, okay. Any specials, colleagues, on items 19 through 41? 19 through 41? Seeing none, let's prepare the roll.
Mr. President, you do have a card on item 37.
Okay, let's call 37 special for card. Any other specials, colleagues? If not, please prepare the roll on the balance and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
On the continuation agenda, items 42 and 43 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, Mr. Weiss, 43? Okay. Anybody wishing to call 42 special? If not, let's open the roll on 42, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Okay. And let's reconsider 6 and 17 now. Anybody wishing to be heard on the reconsideration? If not, let's open the roll on reconsideration, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are both before us, so let's call those special and hold them on the desk for Mr. Parks as well. Okay. We had a motion to take 16 out of order. We have quite a few cards here. What I've done is I've begun to split the cards up into for and against sides. If it's 10, we'll read all names into the record, but I'd like to start with 3 speakers on each side. So if I could invite forward first Gary Barata and Bill Dyer to be our first 2 speakers. You'll have 2 minutes each, gentlemen. Welcome.
My name is Gary Barata. I'm with the Midtown North Hollywood Neighborhood Council. I am also the Director of Animal Welfare for North Hollywood, and I'm here today in opposition to the building of the elephant exhibit at a cost of $40 million. I represent the Director of Animal Welfare's program citywide, and they, as a group, have taken the position that it is unconscionable to essentially build a bullpen and put these 3 elephants in there with a projected addition of another 7 elephants for 10 elephants in this 3.5-acre exhibit. I think that's unconscionable. That's roughly the equivalent of if I said to you that I'm going to put you in your home and give you all the amenities that you need to live, bring you food, and you will not be allowed to leave your home. These are social animals. They need to free range, and they do free range over 25 miles a day. And locking them up in this fashion when this city is in a budget deficit, and indeed, the mayor and his staff looking for inefficiencies in government just coincidentally came up with a number of $40 million that they have found that they can save. To take that money and to put that towards this exhibit is unconscionable. I think we need to allow Ed Boakes, the Director of Animal Services, to weigh in on this issue as well. And Councilmember Labange, all due respect, sir, I know your position, and I respectfully disagree on this issue. But indeed, these are free-ranging social animals. Gita has a foot problem, and the National Zoo in Washington, an elephant died in the last 2 months with this same problem. And if they are not allowed to free range, we're literally just locking them up in a pen, spending $40 million to do this. The cost overruns, as you well know, is going to exceed $50 million on this. So I think this is unconscionable. The directors of animal welfare who are charged in this city with trying to do what they can citywide for the animal community are against this proposition, and we beseech you, please.
Thank you very much, sir.
I fought for this country.
Our next speaker is Mr. Dyer. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Labange?
That's a question. I don't know how many cards you have, but in the interest of having as much public speak as possible, could we ask that it be 1 minute? Would you be afraid so more people could speak? 1 minute comment from each? The
If
two
there's
sides
no
have
objection to that,
no objections. So
As the
1
maker of
minute
the
each.
motion for the
Thank you.
speech, that's fine. We'll do 1 minute. Thank you, Mr. Labange. And Mr. Dyer is next.
I'm Bill Dyer with In Defense of Animals. I live in Venice. Gita was captured in India, and she was brought to the LA Zoo in 1959, 47 years ago. Ruby came to the zoo from Circus Vargas in 1987, 19 years ago. Billy was wild caught in Malaysia and came to the LA Zoo in 1989, some 17 years ago. These 3 elephants have suffered both physically and psychologically from their many years at the LA Zoo. What will happen to these 3 elephants during the time it takes, probably years, before the new exhibit is built, should it be approved? Haven't these elephants served the public long enough? For God's sakes, have some mercy and let them go.
Thank you. Our third speaker on the against side is Patty Schenker. Ms. Schenker, if you'd like to come forward. And we will follow that with 3 folks from the for side.
Good morning. Thank you for hearing me today. My name is Patty Schenker. I'm a wife, mother, and commercial real estate investor in Los Angeles. I care about this city. I love this city. I've invested in this city. I care about its progress, its failings, and its spending. I care about its citizens, and I care about the animals we are responsible for. That is why I'm here today, to urge you to veto this zoo's proposal. Our city cannot afford to make this mistake, and a mistake it is. Our city zoo has never put the animals' best interests first, and with this proposal, they continue the same pattern. They deny these elephants basic needs and put their membership money first. They dared to call them ours, even though all 3 of them were born in the wild, taken from the wild, and their mothers were probably killed to obtain them. That's not ours. I'm sorry. They dare to ignore the basic principles. That went fast.
Thank you.
Well, I have one
testimony.
last thing to say. I urge
Freaking
you
out.
I dare you to, I'm sorry.
If I can ask you to
I'm
conclude,
asking the
I'm
city council to please don't do this for the elephant's sake and for our taxpayers'
Thank
sake.
you very much. Appreciate that. Ron Mardigian, Connie Morgan, and Betty White be our next 3 speakers.
My name is Ron Mardigian. I am a citizen of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you to the council for listening to us. The emotional position taken by those who would have elephants removed from the LA Zoo is clearly heartfelt. However well-meaning those who take that position are, their arguments, aside from emotional, are in large part based on bad information and outdated and bad science. We were told there are no elephants in Santa Barbara Zoo. That is not true. We were told the Bronx Zoo is getting rid of its elephants, but that plan will not go into effect for 20 or so years, if ever. Our ex-zoo director, now the director of the San Francisco Zoo, has removed the elephants because of inadequate conditions, but plans to reintroduce them as soon as possible, recognizing their value to the community there. As to current science and studies, almost all the practicing experts in the areas appropriate to this argument feel the elephants should remain in the LA Zoo,
If I can ask
particularly
you
as
to
it will
conclude,
be
please.
reconfigured. The issue of
Excuse me, sir, if I can ask you to conclude. The timer just expired, but thank you very much. Connie Morgan. Welcome, please.
I'm Connie Morgan, president of the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association. I'm here to remind you today that the voters voted for the Propositions A2 and Prop CC, passing them at high levels, percentages for improvements to the zoo. They have continued to vote with their feet. Our citizens, they come to the zoo 1.5 million strong each year. 68,000 households are members of the Zoo Association. That's 300,000 people who come on a regular basis. They've taken the time to learn about the zoo's mission, to learn about the care and the professionalism, and they want to have the elephants there because they know they are well tended to. GLASA thinks the plan is a good plan. We trust the zoo to carry out for the welfare of these animals. We are committed to raising $4.5 million to help ease your burden in supporting it. And I'd like to say there are a few other people who want to speak here today. Some will not, but they're here to support you. And I'd like to, out of patience for your time just to have them stand, but they will not speak. So if you're not speaking,
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Betty White. Welcome.
I'm Betty White, and I had the privilege of being appointed ambassador for the animals of Los Angeles, which I consider a great honor. And that's only because people know where I'm coming from. I think the people are very important in Los Angeles, but my heart is with the animals, of course, and as is everyone's heart here. The bottom line is we all care about our elephants. I go out in the morning. I've gone out and worked with the elephants. I've shoveled and I've dumped wheelbarrows and I've hosed down. I walk with Gita, with just a keeper and Gita, and I walk all over the zoo. I beg of you, we have worked so long. I've worked with the Los Angeles Zoo for 39 years, and I beg of you, let's not let this opportunity to get a better place for these babies, to let this opportunity go by. And the more time that goes by, the more they have to wait. But also, don't take those elephants and put them in a strange environment. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Catherine Doyle. Catherine Doyle, and then Cherry Bly, and Les Schobert will be our next three speakers.
Actually, I believe Cherry was going to cede her time to me. Is that possible to do? Someone was going to cede her time to me so I can have 2 minutes. Is that possible? Cherry?
I have to, if the next speaker that I called,
Yes, the
sure,
next
you
speaker,
can take
yes.
those 2 minutes.
Yes, she is, okay. My name is Catherine Doyle, and I want to let you know that the taxpayers of Los Angeles do not want to spend $40 million on this elephant exhibit. Opposition to the exhibit is daunting. The two daily newspapers in Los Angeles have written strong editorials in opposition to the exhibit. The only letter to the editor that I saw run in favor came from the zoo director. Other zoo projects are running millions over budget and are years behind schedule. The grill exhibit and reptile house were to actually have opened this year. So what are you voting on? An outdated exhibit that provides marginal improvements for the elephants and will cost the taxpayer plenty. I really don't understand this myopic obsession with this exhibit, while other animals languish in small, outdated pens at LA Zoo. If this exhibit goes forward, there will always be a shadow over it because the public knows it's too small and costs far too much. And they certainly don't want to go to a zoo where they believe the elephants are suffering. And I will continue to expose the suffering there. How March medical records show that Gita, who suffers from captivity-induced arthritis and terminal foot disease, also suffers extensive ulcerations, and this is a quote, on her right rump where she leans up against the bars. This is how Gita takes the weight off of her painful feet and joints, even as she's dosed with painkillers to mask her discomfort. This will not stop in the new exhibit. If this project was truly based on the best interests of the elephants and not just cramming an exhibit into the little space at LA Zoo that they can provide there, we would be talking and agreeing on a much larger elephant exhibit today, one that actually meets the needs of the elephants. Unfortunately, due to certain political processes, I was unable to bring before all of you some of the top experts, or at least a special joint committee meeting, some of the top experts in elephant research and care who do not support a 3.5-acre exhibit. I feel you've been denied the opportunity to hear complete information, and I would hope, in fact, that maybe even, I don't know if this vote can be held today, but that you would be open to hearing more information from some of the world's top experts. Please vote no today, otherwise.
Thank you very much. Les Schobert.
Good morning. My name is Les Schobert, and I have over 30 years' experience working in zoos. This entire issue is simple. The elephant exhibit as proposed is simply too much money for an antiquated exhibit. This is simply a matter of priority spending. If you feel that the city of Los Angeles has this kind of money to waste, then vote for it. If not, then vote against it. It's that simple. Look around. The Los Angeles Times and the Daily News, their editorials, a vote for a white elephant exhibit is not a vote for the welfare of real elephants. Do something good for the elephants and the people of Los Angeles and vote against this exhibit. The elephants deserve a premier habitat, and this plan simply will not do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next three speakers are Lori Winters Samuels, Laurel Colton, and Selma Anderson.
The next speaker is going to cede her time to me. I'm Lori Winters Samuels. I'm a resident of Los Angeles. I'm a mom, and I'm a trustee, and I've been involved with the zoo for nearly a decade. I think my perspective as a parent is no different than the thousands of other parents and families that have supported the zoo in their efforts to keep the elephants. We all understand the importance of and the need for exposure to creatures that come from places on the other side of the planet, and I do mean need. Looking at photos and watching videos is one thing, but we know that seeing a painting up close is a different experience than seeing it in a book. Seeing a movie about the far reaches of Africa doesn't come close to experiencing it firsthand. We get that. Taking these elephants away from the children and families of Los Angeles will forever exclude them from learning, appreciating, and understanding these incredible animals. Now let me speak as a trustee. I've gotten to know some incredible individuals associated with the zoo, and I want to focus on two of them right now. They're two people who have devoted their lives to the well-being of animals. When it comes to animal welfare, there are not two more educated nor more sincere people anywhere than Betty White, the mayor's ambassador for animals in Los Angeles, and John Lewis, our director of the zoo. Knowing them as I do, and as I think most of you do, I can promise you that if either Betty or John thought for one instance that these elephants would be better off at a sanctuary than under the care of the LA Zoo, they would be the first to say, move them. But they don't, because they get it. And they know that the proposed habitat and the incomparable health care and attention these animals will receive at the LA Zoo cannot be matched, not even close. So for the children, the parents, the educators, and the elephants, I hope that you keep the elephants where they belong at the LA Zoo.
Thank you very much. Selma Anderson. Welcome, Ms. Anderson.
Before I start, Kristen Biggs should be on your list if she wants to cede her time to me.
We have to go 3 at a time, so there's just 1 minute left on this side, so if I can ask you to keep to a minute.
Okay, that's
Thank you.
fine. All right. I'm Laurel Colton, a resident of LA County and an LA Zoo patron for more than 30
I'm sorry,
years.
just if we can pause the timer. The last speaker said that the next speaker would cede her time. That was you, Ms. Colton, and I just got, it was the other person who was going to cede? Okay, go ahead. So, go ahead, Ms. Colton,
Sure.
please.
I'm Laurel Colton, a resident of LA County and an LA Zoo patron for more than 30 years. My PhD is in animal learning and behavior. I helped write the petition to keep the elephant program at the LA Zoo. However, you should know that the signatures that we obtained reflects citizens' deep concerns for these elephants. They are not merely ink on a page. Many LA citizens had heard about the elephant's possible removal, and they reacted with disbelief, anger, frustration, and sadness. Some said they could not imagine coming to the LA Zoo and not seeing elephants. They recognized that having elephants at the LA Zoo was an important part of education and conservation efforts for these animals. These are intelligent citizens. They wanted to actually look at the elephants of Surin habitat plan before making a decision about whether to sign our petition. People went out into their communities and they actually circulated the petition themselves, so I hope you will vote yes in favor of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Devin Murphy is our next speaker. Karen Bonadillo and Monica Harmon. Those are our next 3 speakers on the against side.
We couldn't hear the name.
I'm sorry, Devin Murphy, Karen Bonadillo, and Monica Harmon.
My name is Devin Murphy. I'm in the political wing of the campaigns department, Last Chance for Animals. And over the past 4 months, I've had the opportunity to speak with many of you and many of your staff members about the elephants at the zoo. I'd like to thank you for your time and your attention. I've learned a lot in the time I've spent examining this issue. The LA Zoo is in Councilmember Tom LaBonge's district, and this expansion clearly means a lot to him. Mr. LaBonge is the primary driving force in this council behind this wasteful $40 million expansion. Surprisingly, however, it's not a love of Los Angeles or a love of the zoo even that is driving Mr. LaBonge. This expansion is not about the children of LA or the want for a child to see an elephant in a zoo. This is about politics. This is about financial contributions from GLAZA members to Mr. LaBonge's political campaigns. Mayor Villaraigosa is not immune to these same influences. It is a simple political lesson. If Mr. LaBonge keeps his major contributors happy who support the zoo, they will keep giving him money. You do not answer to Mr. LaBonge. He's worked hard to keep these people happy by making political trades and attempting to strong-arm this commission, or this council, I apologize. Please vote no. Please vote for your constituents, not Mr. LaBonge.
Karen Bonadillo.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to invite all of you council members to join Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. Zine, and please come into the 21st century. The age in which we live, we don't treat animals this way. Children go to zoos because their parents tell them. They don't have to go to zoos. The age in which we live is different. They're internet children. I'd like to mention, too, Mr. Lewis has stated these elephants will be on 3.5 acres. Wrong. These elephants will have usable square footage of 2.5. Mr. Lewis keeps evading the answer to the question, how many elephants will be there, Mr. Lewis? Well, guess what? It's going to be between 8 and 10 elephants on 10 acres. I mean, excuse me, on 2.5 acres. Mr. Lewis says his zoo is going to be a cutting-edge zoo. Well, if you all go to the website of the Oakland Zoo, they have 6 acres for 4 elephants, and on their website they say, elephants live between 65 and 70 years. Mr. Lewis says early 40s.
Thank you.
Something's wrong.
Thank
Please
you very
vote
much.
no.
Monica Harmon.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It amazes me Reggie the alligator and these elephants are getting more publicity than our officers who are assaulted and shot at all the time in their respective and different communities. I think it's cruel to put 3 elephants in this small amount of land. All the publicity that I've read on it, everyone is against it, but I have a feeling you're going to vote for it. If you want to look for money because our city is in a deficit, go after the illegal street vendors. Go stop the abuse of special event waivers. We need the money. If you're spending $39 million, you're sending the wrong message to the taxpayers. It's amazing that you find this for these elephants, and yet our officers haven't been increased in I don't know how many years, and no one found the money until this year with the mayor's trash hike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Harmon. Lori Stoneman, Sherry Carroll, and I just have something that says Laura from who lives on Malcolm. No last name. Ms. Stoneman, the next speaker. Lori Stoneman.
Thank you. Mr. Dwyer said that Gita has been at the zoo for 37 years, or 47 was it? I'm not sure. And she is an elderly elephant. She's in her sunset years, so to speak. And it would be like taking your grandmother out of her home and sending her off to some old age retirement place, away from her family, away from her keepers, away from everybody and everything that she has known all her life. And I don't think that's something that would be healthy for her. She would probably get out there and drop dead, whereas at the LA Zoo, she would finish off her years in the comfort that she has known all this time. The other elephants are equally as well cared for, and we love them, and we hope our children can see them and the fascination that they bring us as they grow up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sherry Carroll. Is Sherry Carroll there?
Hello, my name is Sherry Carroll. I am a resident of Sherman Oaks, and I pay taxes in Los Angeles. And I've been involved with the Los Angeles Zoo for over 20 years, and I have personally seen the wonderful care the elephants receive. I support the new Elephants of Sarin habitat, and so believe in their new habitat that I helped put together a petition and helped to gather over 13,000 signatures from, thank you very much, from citizens all over Los Angeles. What impressed me the most is how well informed the citizens of Los Angeles are about the zoo and how much they care about our elephants, and they want to be heard as well. The citizens of Los Angeles made it clear that they would like the new Elephants of Sarin habitat to be completed as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And is there a Laura? I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you. Is there Laura ready to testify? If not, I'll go to the next card.
I cede my time to Lila Silver.
Okay.
My name is Lila Silvern. I was the coordinator of a program for immigrant children. There were 33,000 in our city, Los Angeles Unified School District. My job was to find places to hold English classes for them during their intersessions and summer vacations, and arrange for buses to take them there and on field trips to learn about their new city. The most popular trip was the LA Zoo, and the most popular animal has been the elephant. The elephant has been written about, drawn, and read about by thousands of elementary school children. Perhaps it's because the great animal is universally accepted as a powerful but gentle and intelligent family-loving animal, dramatized in literature and films which children relate to. The elephant manifests characteristics which we wish to instill in children: taking care of the young, caring for sick, staying with family, remembering. The elephant is the animal that's been chosen by the middle and high school students in our school for research, habit dioramas, and observation.
I can ask you to
Getting
conclude,
kids
please.
out of their dreary schools in some of the unsafest neighborhoods of the city and bringing them to study at the zoo has resulted in better attendance and improved English
Thank you, ma'am.
proficiency.
And I'm sorry, I know somebody else ceded your time, but there was only one speaker left on that side, so. We're well past the 20 minutes that were allocated for public comment. I do want to, as we close the public record, establish there were 35 cards that were here in support of the proposal and 17 against and 13 that were indeterminate. I'd like to read the names into the record. Betty Simmons, this is from the Foresight, or Simons, excuse me. Flame Simon, Kelby Britton, Juanita Kemp, Tamara Garlow, excuse me if I mangle any of these names, Jeannie Vassals, Dilly Ashby, Angelo Cravata, Lydia Benigno, Beth Yale, Deborah Pierce, Charles Pierce, Tricia Kokoska, Mita Shah, Shirley McDaniel, Maribel Benigno, Elaine Friedberg, Linda Chris, Barbara Barnes, Sean Johnson, Carol Fonseca, Josephine Ice, Lisa Correa, Lila Silvern, Kristen Biggs, Kimberly Marteau Emerson. On the opposition side, we had Malati Ramji, Marlene Goodman, Leonard Goodman, Gretchen Gassell, Sarah Manis, Melia Kaplan, Kendall Beck, and Rosita de Kiersmaker, and then we also had Kim Luense, Alexia Brazon, and Mary Sager McFadden as well. So I want to put those into the record. We sometimes have here in City Council two competing and equally worthy things that are happening at the same time. There's been a motion to suspend for 5 minutes so that we can, you probably wondered why everybody's wearing jeans around here today, and we have a rally that's going to be in solidarity with I think a couple 100,000 people, and wanted to cede, if there's no objection, the time to Mr. Weiss to do a presentation on number 43, and we will return then to the council members' debate on item number 16. So Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we're calling item 43. It's actually, this is a report, colleagues, from the Los Angeles Commission on Assaults Against Women. I'd ask Patty Giggins, the executive director, and the folks who are with here to come forward to make a brief report. You all know it's Denim Day on the council. You're all wearing denim, as everyone here has done for years and years, to promote awareness about sexual assault and get out the message that it doesn't matter what you wear, what you do, what you say. It doesn't matter at all. There is no excuse for sexual assault in our society, and we're getting that message out in Los Angeles thanks to the Los Angeles Commission on Assaults Against Women and its irrepressible executive director, Patty Giggins. Because the rally starts soon, and these folks need to get over there and manage the rally, I appreciate the indulgence of taking them now. Patty, you're here. You can tell us who you're here with, and perhaps give us a brief briefing in terms of the efforts of the Los Angeles Commission on Assaults Against Women, the explosion in success of Denim Day, and take it away, Patty. Thank you, Mr. President, for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Weiss, and thank you all for taking a moment to acknowledge Denim Day in LA. I'm here with Paula Petrata from the City Commission on the Status of Women, Lori Vallant, who is a LACAW board member and also works at LAUSD. I'm also here with Michelle Chang, who is a volunteer at LACAW, and she has a story to tell, and I'm very happy to introduce my daughter Ruby, who is 11, who's participating in Denim Day today. Today is Denim Day in the city of LA and the county of Los Angeles, and 50 cities in our county have signed up to participate this year. This is our 8th annual Denim Day, and I really want to applaud and appreciate our city council, your leadership, because every year you have supported Denim Day and have helped us facilitate a wider and wider rape prevention campaign in our city. Today, over 250,000 people, that's a 66% increase of participation from last year, of folks who have signed up to wear jeans, to wear wide denim buttons, to post information, rape prevention information, to hold seminars, discussions, and to talk about sexual violence and how to prevent it. One of the things I think it's important to remember is that in Los Angeles City, there are 6 rape crisis centers, our sister agencies, and we are all part of a network throughout the city and expanding into the county to work towards supporting survivors and intervening at the point of trauma, and also working to prevent it through education, prevention education on college campuses and in our high schools. LACAW's programming is very complex. We're here to support survivors 24 hours a day. We show up in court. We show up as advocates at the hospital. We will show up at police stations. We are there to be the guide, the support person, the advocacy person throughout the whole process for the survivors. Rape is a crime of traumatic abuse that thrives in silence. It is the bravest among us that come forward and report it and talk about it. The LACAW motto is violence is preventable. If we can see it, if we can talk about it, we can change it. There is still a tremendous stigma associated with being the victim of sexual assault. And this is where we all come in, because we all must support survivors. Rape victims are survivors. They are more than accusers, and they deserve the support to come forward to seek justice and to heal the wounds of having someone take power and control over their body and spirits. And that's why we wear Denim Day today. Denim Day started from an Italian Supreme Court case that was overturned by a judge who claimed that if the victim was wearing tight jeans, she must have been complicit in the act, that it wasn't a rape but consensual sex. We wear denim to stand up for survivors, to call for more rape prevention education and overall violence prevention education in our schools and our community. We wear denim because our jails and prisons are populated by abusers who were sexually abused themselves as children. Sexual violence occurs behind prison bars because women and girls and boys are sexually trafficked within countries and across borders. We wear denim today because internet sex crimes are on the rise. We wear denim because our kids need to be safer and our teenagers need to be taught to give and expect respect in the sexual arena. I could go on, you can go on, we can add all the reasons why it's necessary to have an ever-expanding participatory rape prevention campaign in our city. We wear denim because we don't want it to happen to the people we love. We don't want it to happen to anyone. It takes courage to speak out, to give a public face to the intimate crime of sexual violence. Survivors are the bravest among us. And I am very honored to present to you Michelle Chang, who has a story to share.
Good morning. It's good to be back. I actually used to work in this building. About 5 years ago, I had been out visiting some friends, and I was making my way back late one night.
Excuse me one second. If I could just ask folks to keep their conversation, please, to a minimum. Thank you. Please continue.
As I was driving back, a man in a luxury car pulled up next to mine and waved at me to pull over. Because I had just gotten my car back out of the shop, I thought that there was something wrong with my vehicle or that he needed help. When I pulled over, he entered my car without permission, and over the next hour, he threatened, choked, sexually assaulted, and ultimately raped me. Was the rape my fault? At the time, I thought yes. I shouldn't have pulled over. In a panic, I went to the police. I had caught his license plate as he had driven off. The police were able to match that information with the information of another woman who actually came in a few nights before me, saying that she had been sexually assaulted by him as well. Was the rape my fault? Maybe not. He did this to someone else too. By the time I had come back from the hospital, from being examined and having a rape kit put together, they had him in custody. The case went to court. The night of the assault, I had been wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. And I had just been visiting some friends. In the courtroom, I was accused of being something else entirely. The other woman, she also testified. The case ended in a conviction for him on my counts, but not for hers. Was the rape my fault? I can say now, no, it wasn't. And for her, no matter what walk of life you come from, or what you're wearing, no one deserves to be victimized. And that is the message of Denim Day, that there is no excuse and never an invitation for this kind of violence. And I just want to thank LACAW, and especially the city of LA. It is huge for survivors like me to know that we have support out there, and especially of the city of Los Angeles. And I know that LACAW will continue to make these changes in the way that we view survivors and what they go through. And I just wanted to thank you very much for that.
Last year, there were 928 rapes in the city of Los Angeles. 190 were actually arrested. The perpetrators were actually arrested. We know that 61% of rapes are not reported, and most are not prosecuted. The victims suffer. I used to be a rape counselor many years ago, would talk to victims, survivors who had been raped 30 or 40 years ago, and the incident lives with them every single day. I really commend the City of LA and certainly LACAW for the work that they're doing on Denim Day and every single day. I've had the pleasure of working with LACAW for many years, and now they are working with our Young Women at Risk program, talking to our young girls about rape and the problems associated with, rape and what happens in the courtroom and how you can survive, and the strong stories and the courageous stories of women like Michelle. And I just want to commend LACAW and the City of LA for bringing this to everyone's attention. It's not in the closet anymore. It is not a secret. Rape is a real crime in the City of Los Angeles, and unfortunately, it's one that continues to increase every single year. So we really do applaud their efforts, and I know we've spoken many late nights because Patty's in the office and we're in the office, hoping that rape will end in Los Angeles. Did you want to say something?
Sure. Good morning. My name's Lori Valland, and I was a teacher at Marshall High School for 15 years. Excuse me. That story just got me. And it's because it's not the first time I've heard it, and she's not the first one I've heard it from. Working at Marshall High School, and the young women and men that have come to me and told me what's happened to them, it's very difficult to deal with that. But I didn't have to do this alone. I had LACAW. And with the services of LACAW, these children are not just exposed and left. These children are come forward bravely and then supported through the services of LACAW. Because of my work with LACAW at Marshall High School, I became a board member. And it's so important to connect education to this issue. The young men of our city are not the enemy. They need to be taught. They need to be taught about healthy relationships, about what it means to be respectful, to use their strength to protect, to use their strength to be partners. And young men are victims of assault, and it's even harder for them to come forward, but they do, and thank God for LACAW. Now I work as an administrator in Los Angeles Unified School District. I'm in charge of safe and drug-free schools. LA Unified, this is the first year we went district-wide with this campaign, and every school was reached with this message. And today at Denim Day, I'm really proud to say there are at least 1,000 students from LA Unified participating in this event, both middle school and high school. And again, Mr. LaBonge, I have to absolutely thank you for your support at Marshall. So I just want to thank you all today. Thank you.
I want to say that we have Denim Day caps for every council member, and the rally is at noon, right next to Staples Center, parking lot 7, right off Fig, and we are expecting some of you to come. We look forward to seeing some of you showing up at the Denim Day rally. And the numbers that Paula, I'd just like to add, talked about last year, the reported rapes to LAPD, that means 3 rapes a day. And if 60% of rapes are still not reported, we're talking about, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women and girls and young boys who are suffering and are at risk in our city. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. And before you leave, we want to just thank all the city employees and other folks who are involved in this in the city family. It is really remarkable, and thank you, Mr. Weiss, for your leadership in organizing that. I know Ms. Gruhl and I were at the kickoff event for this a couple weeks ago, and I know Ms. Gruhl wanted to say something. I know sometimes that can lead to other council members all wanting to say something. I do know that these folks have to get out of here at 11, so in order to lead that rally. So, Ms. Gruhl.
And I will be brief, and thank you. And I similarly got choked up, and I've heard now twice as well from Ms. Chang, and appreciate your willingness to be public about it, because it is an incident that a lot of people have difficulty talking about. And I think Denim Day is also about talking about it, and talking to young people and making sure that people say that rape is not okay and it's not the victim's fault. And so I want to thank LACAW, all of you, and the Commission on the Status of Women, because you've done a lot. And Eric and I committed that night at the reception that we would challenge all of our cities, council members, and other cities across the country to be part of Denim Day next year. So to expand the number of people who wear jeans today. I think all of us would like to wear jeans every single day. So just because of casual nature, but for those of you watching, that's why we're casual today, to send a message that it's not okay, and it's not okay to blame the victim. And so thank you very, very much for all your efforts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, and good luck with the rally. If time permits, we will, of course, be there in solidarity. We invite members of the public to go down to that rally. Again, that's going to be at noon today, right next to Staples Center in parking lot 7, down off of Figueroa. With that, we will return now to the previous item, and I want to thank again the folks who came here for public comment on the previous item that we were debating, and members of the press as well for their indulgence there. Yes, sorry, we should receive and file that item. Why don't we open the roll on that? Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, thank you. That will be received and filed. And let's return now to item number 16. We'll first hear from Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask that the CAO, the CLA, Chief Legislative Analyst, City Administrative Officer, the Zoo Director, and the City Engineer please come to the center table and give a brief report to the council on what is before us.
Thank you very much. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible, but I do need to cover some very, very important facts and issues. On December 13th, we released a report that speaks to the LA elephant exhibit, and also the process we use to review the housing and the health needs of the zoo's elephants. This is an extremely comprehensive report. The centerpiece of the report was the work done by an independent veterinarian. I want to emphasize the word independent. It was an individual that we took considerable time in identifying the person. It was agreed, the person was agreed to by individuals from both sides of this equation, those who both oppose the, this elephant exhibit and those who support it. As a consequence of that report, which I think is extremely comprehensive, the veterinarian identified the challenges that we have with this particular exhibit, stated in general terms that the health of the elephants are good. At one point in her report, she said, once we build this exhibit, there'll be no other facility in the United States nor staff who will care for elephants better. That's extremely important. We also looked at AZA standards. It should be noted that the standard for 3 elephants is less than 1%, less than 1/10 of 1 acre. We're building a site that's going to be over 3 acres. The total exhibit, including the barns, would be about 6 acres. That is very, very significant. We have pictures of the sites. You need to see this compared to what we have now. This is a very, very significant improvement. The one thing I want to comment I think that's very, very important. A lot has been said about the funding. Of this $39 million, all but 13 are special funds, funds that must be used for this purpose unless we get the express approval from, in one instance, the county. In another instance, because of the zoo bonds, it will be used for the zoo. If you go to the zoo now It is, the middle part of the zoo is empty dirt. We cleared this area. If we do not build this exhibit, we will build another exhibit. You cannot leave the middle of the zoo empty. The cost will still be there. The money we're talking about now is about $13 million in MICLA funds. MICLA is something that we use for projects of this type. I would remind all of you, we put MICLA funds throughout the whole city. We have projects, and through, not because of our problems on the city side, but through, say, construction costs going up. We've had shortfalls in a lot of our projects. We've closed that gap with MICLA funds or with general funds through our CIEP program. I can name projects in every single council district, whether they're pools or rec centers or civic buildings, administrative buildings. But we do that. That's what we do. And it's done for an express purpose. We have a major facility in the East Valley. We have stuff in the West Valley. We have things down in the harbor. But it's for the people we serve, the constituents. A lot of folks, some folks have told me, well, we're an internet society. But I would submit that the vast majority of the kids who are visiting this facility could only access the internet when they go to the library. They don't have a computer at home. We have, on an annual basis, 53,000 kids from LA Unified School District in our city who can walk into the zoo for free and go there every year. We have another over 220,000 kids from other parts of the county who pay $1 to go there. If you go to the zoo on any given day, it's not kids who have other opportunities. You look at the type of families who go to the zoo. It's the families from our minority communities, because the zoo still remains the best ticket in town. It is extremely reasonable. It's for a purpose. We do that for a purpose, for a family of many, 3, 4, 5, or 6, to go to the zoo. Now we're talking about, so the cost issue is something that's been thrown at us to say, why are we doing this? I remind you, and all of you, without calling out any single council district, you know we've finished projects in your council districts that are, the sole purpose is not for us, but for the constituents of people we serve, and we do that. I remind you of the people who go there. Now, I'm ready to answer questions about the costs. I would ask you to look at our report. It's not just our opinion. It's the opinion of an expert in the field of zoo veterinary medicine who has said this project and the size of this project and the care that will be provided through this project, not only because of, again, the amenities in the project, but also the staff we're recommending to increase the quality of the veterinary care for these elephants, will make it the best exhibit in the United States. This is our zoo. One concern that I have at one zoo up north in San Francisco, a group of individuals, essentially the same group, were able to convince that governing body to eliminate the elephant exhibit. Shortly thereafter, they questioned whether or not that zoo should have have hippos and rhinos. What's next? We're a world-class city. This city deserves a zoo that's equal to the same class. And my office, myself personally, my office, we strongly urge that you support this proposal, that we move forward and we finish this exhibit. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Lewis?
I don't think there's much I can add after that, but I will just highlight a couple of things that I think are important for the council to consider, and that is, first of all, the elephants at the Los Angeles Zoo are getting excellent care, and as Bill said, that was verified by an independent veterinarian. That's been verified by the veterinarians that take care of them 24/7, and it's verified by the excellent care that they get by their keepers at our institution. I think maybe the keepers and the veterinarians at the Los Angeles Zoo have kind of gotten lost in this as people make comments that it's not a good habitat, they're not getting good care, that we ought to just send them somewhere else and let someone else take care of them. Their hard work is getting lost. And I'll just mention Gita for a minute as an example. There was a comment made that she had a terminal injury to her foot. Gita had an infected foot. Surgery was done on that foot by our veterinarians, by a team that came in from UC Davis Vet School. They did a pretty radical surgery on her left foot. That foot is essentially healed. There is a small tract there now that the vets are working on closing. But what has happened is our vets, in concert with the team from Davis, used treatments that are used in horses and cows now. If you remember in the past, when a horse broke its leg, they shot it because you cannot treat the legs of ungulate animals, hooved animals, because they don't have much blood supply. They use a treatment that is being used in equine practice on Gita and have healed this foot. That's important to Gita, but more importantly, it's important to every elephant in the world that has that same problem, because our vets will publish that information. They will share it with every other vet, whether it's in a zoo or in the wild, that encounters an elephant with a foot problem. That's the kind of work we do every day at the zoo. It's not just about elephants. It's the good work that the men and women that take care of the animals do every day. This is going to be an exciting exhibit. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, it isn't just about space. It's what we do with that space, how we manage the animals within the space. If we don't set their day up so that they are encouraged and give an opportunity to use that space, they won't. They'll stand by the barn and wait for their next meal. They even do that in the wild. If they live in areas where they have abundant resources, elephants don't move the mileage that you've heard over and over again. It's in the scientific literature. You can find it. You can see examples of where they move and where they don't move. The public wants this exhibit. You've heard that they don't, but you've heard from a lot of people today that they do want this exhibit. The petitions that were collected verify that. Polls that were done all across North America verify that. 96% of the people, the adults in the United States polled, said they thought having elephants and rhinos in zoos was important. 86% of those people said that visiting an accredited zoo with rhinos and elephants caused them to get involved in conservation efforts, either with their time or money. This morning in the Daily News, they're running an electronic poll. 73% of the people responding said they want this exhibit. And I think it's time to build it so that we can provide this good home for our animals. Gita, again, the animal is mentioned, walked from the old Griffith Park Zoo to the new zoo. And I think we ought to give her a new exhibit to live out the rest of her life. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can please, I know there's a strength of emotion on both sides, but if I can ask folks to please contain their enthusiasm during the debate part, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I know on both sides there'd be a series of probably claps, boos, and other things depending on what we hear. So thank you again for all being here. We know that you're here. Any other?
I'll be very brief. I think Bill has it exactly right.
Could you identify yourself for the public, Mr. Miller?
Sure. Jerry Miller, Chief Legislative Analyst. I don't believe the question before you today is one of cost avoidance. I think it's unlikely that this council and the region would allow a 3-acre hole in the middle of the zoo to remain undeveloped. So certainly something would need to go there. I think the question before you is whether the planned exhibit is harmful to the elephants. Now, the charge the CAO was given was to go out and find an independent veterinarian to do that. They reached out to the stakeholders, and they got someone that was acceptable to all sides, and the report, and a comprehensive report was prepared. And I think the independent answer to that question from somebody with no dog in this hunt, if you will, is that the planned exhibit is in fact going to be beneficial to the elephants, and we do support you moving forward with the funding allocation.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Labange, would you like to say anything further, or would you like to continue with the speaker queue?
Thank you very much, members. I think our CAO, our CLA, and the zoo director, along with the city engineer, articulated clearly what's before us, and it is absolutely very important for us. We have 3 elephants at the zoo. We all know them as Gita, Ruby, and Billy. We know that it's important to get the right space, and I've walked out there and pushed out that as far as we can, and believe me, I'd like to push it even more. But right now, we got to make it better for them and make it safer for them. And if you look over here on this diagram right here, this is what they're in right now. And we're pushing it out where they go all the way up where the bird aviary used to be and all the way to the path. And children of Los Angeles could then experience something that they'll never experience in their lives. Members, I ask you to vote aye on this. This is an investment in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Zoo, and it's an investment in the children of Los Angeles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Smith will be our next speaker, be followed by Ms. Hahn, Mr. Wesson, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Zine, and Mr. Reyes. Mr. Smith?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I always enjoy hearing both sides of an argument. I appreciate all those that came here today. One thing that really bothers me is when I hear people present false information. I want to correct some of the things that I heard because I truly believe when you want to argue a point, you've got to tell the truth, otherwise you lose credibility. Many of you said this is a waste of $40 million that you could be using in other things. It was stated very clearly. We're talking about $13 million, not $40 million. The rest of the money is reserved for the zoo. It was voted and indemnified by the people of Los Angeles for the zoo. We cannot take it and put it in the police department. We can't fix your streets with it. It is zoo money. When we took this bond to the people, we said very clearly, we want to fix the zoo, make it better. We deserve a better zoo. I can't remember a better poster child for the LA Zoo than the elephants that are there. I can't imagine going to a zoo and not seeing the most magnificent creature on earth, an elephant. And so to say to the people of LA that voted for the money to fix our zoo, we're going to take the biggest elephants, the biggest exhibit we have out, the thing that people think of most as the thing they want to see when they go to a zoo, and we're not going to have it there anymore. We're lying to the people when we ask them to give us that money to fix the zoo. And so I think that's an inappropriate argument for those who are arguing that we should do something else with those elephants. Secondly, I heard a lady talk about we should be putting money into cops and we shouldn't be taxing people, the mayor's proposal, all that stuff. I want you to know that last year this council allocated $300 million for more police officers without a tax increase, the biggest increase in the years in this chamber for police. And so we are doing that. We are finding money for the police department. It can't come out of the zoo, folks. So this money was voted by the people to go to the zoo, and it's different than the budget we talk about when we talk about hiring police officers. So please don't cloud your argument with facts that are not correct. It just does you no good. Finally, somebody attacked Mr. LaBonge. That's totally inappropriate. For those people who know Mr. LaBonge, whether you're sitting over here or over there or around this horseshoe, Mr. LaBonge didn't bully anybody, pressure anybody. In fact, he never called me once and asked for my vote on this. He never approached me in my office and asked me for my vote. He stated his case in committee. I agreed with his case. He asked me one day in the hall, where are you going to be on this? And I said, I'm going to be with you, Tom. And that was the extent of it. So to say Mr. LaBonge is bullying the people of this council for the benefit of the people that gave him money is very inappropriate, and I find it very offensive. And I'm going to vote for the zoo today. I'm going to vote to keep the elephants there. I cannot imagine sending people from the inner city of one of America's largest cities to the zoo and not them see one of the most greatest creatures on earth.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our next speaker is Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a couple of questions. One is in terms of the size of what we're proposing here today. And a lot of people I know have been to the Wild Animal Park in San Diego and consider that a pretty large area where the animals are sort of running free. Can you compare this elephant exhibit with the exhibit at the Wild Animal Park? Could you hold my time?
They have two exhibits at the Wild Animal Park, one for African elephants, which is 3 acres, and that has 8 elephants on it. And then they have another one that's 2.5 acres that has 6 Asian elephants on it.
And ours will be
3.5 acres.
for how many elephants?
3 initially, and if I can address the comment that was made about 8,
Right.
10, 20, how many. We have built a barn that will hold 10 animals. That's for the future. Obviously, budget will determine how many animals we have when we bring them in. We built more bull barns because if we do start breeding elephants at this institution, like most mammals, 50% of the offspring will be bulls. We'll need a home for those animals.
Again, so I mean, I think that's a fact that really needs to be stressed today, is that our exhibit that we're proposing here today is going to be larger than the exhibit at the Wild Animal Park in San Diego. And I think that gives a good visual to a lot of us that have been there. Just a question about the health and safety of these elephants, how old they are, how long they've been at our zoo. And I will say, I think on both sides of this debate today, as well as all of us, we all love our animals. We all love these elephants, and it's about what we think is going to be in their best interest, as well as the best interest of the people of Los Angeles. In terms of their age, their health, how long they've been at this exhibit, their familiarity with this exhibit, what would it actually be like for them to, at this point in their lives, be transported to a reserve or a sanctuary? Hold my time.
Well, if it's done right, it can be done. We do it with animals. We move animals around for genetic and breeding purposes, for demographic purposes, having right age structures of herds. It's how you do it and what safety precautions you take for the animals. So it can be done, but it has to be looked at as why would it be done? Just to moving animals has an inherent risk to it when you're transporting animals. So there really should be a major purpose for doing that.
If I can add something, I think that's very important, because members of this council, in my discussions with them, have expressed a concern regarding the well-being of the elephants. In our report, we recommend a biannual report from the zoo and be with our office on the health and welfare of the elephants. We also state, today we're focusing, with all due respect to our zoo director, on the number of elephants we have today, and to go forward with the exhibit as currently proposed, little over almost 3.5 acres. If the zoo decides to expand the size, the number of elephants, they have to come back through this council. But we will, before, how many times have you heard about the elephants? This is really it. But from this point forward, once you approve this report, on a biannual basis, a report and a comprehensive report will be given to your council on the health and well-being of these animals and the success of this exhibit. Very important element.
Thank you. Well, colleagues, I know you all received a lot of emails from a lot of people. I had about this many pros and cons, and I read almost every single one of them. And I will tell you, I was really swayed by the people that wrote me or emailed me that particularly were members of GLAZA, the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association. These are people who go to the zoo. They support our zoo. They actually budget money out of their own incomes to support the health and happiness of the animals at the zoo. And overwhelmingly, they urged us to vote for this new exhibit, this new expanded exhibit. And I will tell you, one of the ones that was most important to me, of course, was my own daughter, Katie, and my 3 grandchildren, who basically said, Mimi, that's what they call me. I tell them never to call me grandmother in public. They said, Mimi, we love the animals. We love the elephants. And we can't imagine going to this zoo without being able to see those majestic animals. And I also know that when Ruby was taken away from us a couple years ago, my niece Karina was very upset. She shed tears because she had grown up going to the zoo. She had grown up knowing these animals by name. And it was very upsetting to her that Ruby was gone for a while. And she followed Ruby's travels, and she followed that van or whatever it was that took her there. She wanted to know every moment how Ruby was. We're growing up a generation of children who know animals by name in this zoo. We're growing up a generation of children who will respect and love these animals. And with all due respect, these children will never be able to visit a sanctuary or a wild animal preserve somewhere else. And frankly, there was an article over the weekend that talked about some of these sanctuaries and reserves that also are not regulated. And that's not always the panacea for the health and happiness of our animals.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn.
So I'm going to vote for this today because I think it is what's right for Billy, for Ruby, and for Gita, and I think it's what's right for the children of Los Angeles who are going to grow up with a brand new respect for elephants and alligators.
Thank you. Mr. Wesson is our next speaker. And after Mr. Wesson, we have Mr. Padilla, Mr. Zine, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Rosendahl, and Ms. Gruhl in the queue. Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I have some questions that I'd like to ask, but before I ask the question, I do want to go on record like my dear friend and colleague Greg Smith and say that Tom LaBonge is a very honorable man, and that Tom LaBonge has never approached me and tried to twist my arm on this issue. Yesterday, he did say, What are you going to do? And I told him then, I don't know what I'm going to do until I hear the debate. So with that, I have some questions. Now, we have several pots of money where we're trying to put together this $40 million, correct?
Yes.
Hold my time. Now, could we use any of this, and then some of this is a little repetitious, but can we use any of this money at all for police officers, for domestic violence shelters, for AIDS prevention? Mr. Whoever wants to answer that? Could we take this $40 million and just dump it into our budget and use it for those services?
A small amount. The MICLA program will be supported through what we characterize as called debt service.
I want to ask you about MICLA in particular, but the reality is, what you're telling me is, when you say a small amount, how much is that? $1 million, $2 million?
There's $13 million, but on an annual basis, it's about $1.2 million in debt service.
Okay, now, part of the money that we're getting from the County of LA, right?
Yes.
We already have that money, correct?
Yes.
Was that voted on by the people?
Yes, it was voted on by the people.
And what uses could that money, what could we use that money for? What flexibility?
Presently, we have an agreement with the county to use it on this particular exhibit. In fact, we've already used $3 million of this money to clear the exhibit. A consequence of rejecting and voting no today would cost us $3 million. We'd have to pay the county back.
If we voted no, we'd have to give the county back $3 million.
Yes.
The money that we got from the county, is this specifically for parks and zoos, or?
The overall purpose is for parks, but the specific purpose today is for the Middle Zoo.
But the reality is,
exhibit.
We can't use this money for police officers or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
Okay, now, the other money is a zoo bond, right? And how
Yes.
much is that?
Is about $5.8 million.
And that money can only be spent specifically where?
In the zoo.
And the voters of Los Angeles indicated to this council that that money should be spent on the zoo, period.
Period.
Okay, now, what about GLASA? Where could that money be dumped back in our budget? Can we spend that money on
Absolutely
cops?
not. Absolutely not.
That money's been raised for what purpose?
In this instance, for this exhibit, GLASA has, and I should have recognized them earlier, they absolutely have stepped up. They've made a commitment, a very strong commitment to raise $4.5 million for this project. We also have a property that's been donated through GLASA for this project that could raise another $2.3 million for a total of $6.8 million.
But that money can only be spent in the park, in the zoo.
Yes.
That
Well,
is
the GLASA money only for this exhibit.
Period, because
Period.
a lot of people are of the belief that we could just take $39, $40 million and just dump it into the city budget. And I just want you, with the great ability to articulate that you have, Mr. Fujioka, to indicate that that is not correct.
Which is true, Councilman.
Now, lastly, the MICLA funds, what can they be used for?
Well, the MICLA funds we use for capital projects.
Can they be used for what is a capital project?
It's essentially a building project. And as I mentioned, it's up to $13 million. The debt service on an annual basis is $1.2 million. Now, technically, that $1.2 million that will service the debt can be used for anything, because that does come from the general fund. So of the $39 million, that small portion, or approximately $13 million or up to, will come through our MICLA program and will be serviced by $1.2 million in general fund, from the general fund.
And just lastly, again, what adverse effect will us using the MICLA funds have where it relates to our city budget? What was that figure?
On an annual basis, it's $1.2 million.
Okay, thank you very much. You've answered my questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wesson. Our next speaker is Mr. Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll be asking a series of questions if you hold my time while they reply, and have a feeling I have to press my button a second time to get to all the questions. But the first one is, having been here a couple of years ago when folks were coming to Los Angeles to visit the zoo, talked to numerous city officials about the zoo's accreditation. Can you comment on how this decision fits into the context of our zoo accreditation?
Well, the decision itself wouldn't affect the accreditation. The lack of improving the facilities and updating the facilities would. Our current exhibit meets the standards, but barely, and so we're trying to build an exhibit that greatly exceeds the standards for accreditation. If we were to leave an unfinished scar in the middle of the zoo, that could very much affect our accreditation, yes.
Okay, and that's important to me, because all of a sudden, we're not just talking about, what we do with elephants, if we have elephants, but
Right.
the entire future of the zoo. And sort of a follow-up to that specific question, I don't know if you can give us an overview as to what the state of affairs is in other zoos in California or comparable zoos. You mentioned Oakland earlier, San Francisco, San Diego, who many people regard as the
Right.
model for zoos throughout the country, maybe elsewhere. Can you give us sort of a comparison, contrast? Do they have elephants, yes or no? How many elephants? How many acres?
Right. Just to go on with San Diego, they are preparing to expand their exhibit, which they also have at the zoo, as opposed to the wild animal park. They're looking at 2 to 2.5 acres. It's going to depend on how much they can get in the existing space. And they're proposing to have Asian elephants there as well, probably about 6 elephants. So they will stay with exhibits that are in the 2.5 to 3 acre range. The Oakland Zoo has 6 acres total for their elephants. It's divided, as I understand it, into 2 pens. 3.5 acres is the display exhibit. In other words, during the public hours, the elephants are restricted to that 3.5 acre space. At the after hours, they open up the gate and let the elephants have the entire space. Santa Barbara still has their elephants. They just recently went through a major upgrade to improve their facility so that they meet the accreditation standards, but their intent is to allow those animals to live out their life, and then they're not going to continue with elephants. They're going to, I think, move into rhinos. In addition, I'm trying to think real quick, the Chaffee Zoo, I believe, has elephants and just barely at meeting the standards, and they're looking at trying to upgrade their facility as well. And there's one other, there's the SeaWorld in Northern California has a herd of elephants. I don't know the size of their exhibit, but with the exception of Oakland, this will be the largest exhibit in the state.
Okay. Well, I know our debate's going to go on for a little while, so if maybe a staff person can make a few quick phone calls and bring us back that information in a few minutes, I'd appreciate that. The next question is a sort of a legislative, possibly legal question. Many of us understand that there's proposed state legislation or possibly state legislation that's been introduced to set minimum standards for zoo exhibits in California that may be above and beyond what we're proposing to do here.
Right.
It'd be a shame to sink this much money into an exhibit only to find it in a year's time to be unsuitable or not compliant with state law. Would we be grandfathered in, or can you at least comment on the legality or strategy on that point?
Well, we're actually looking at that bill, and we'll come back to you with a recommended position. As we understand, the initial proposal, it would require slightly more space than the exhibit provides. But we would expect, I think within the next couple of weeks, that would be heard, start being heard in committee. So we would get a sense of where that was going, certainly well before any money was spent on this. So at least with this particular bill, I don't believe that we're at risk, but we do need to get back to you with a position on that legislation.
Okay. And part of consideration in that report should include whether or not that bill would basically create an unfunded mandate, or would there be funding provided via that bill for compliance?
Yes.
Can you, for the sake of history for the council and anybody watching our proceeding here, give us an overview of the zoo bond that was passed several years ago by the voters of Los Angeles, the percentage by which it passed, how much money that represented, what the scope of that investment was for the zoo?
Here, come here. Have a seat. Maria Cardenas from our office has a detail for the zoo bond. As she's getting ready, all of you, I know most of you, like myself, born and raised here. I remember going to the zoo 20 years ago. This is not the same zoo. The front entrance has been redone. We have the chimpanzee exhibit. We have the orangutan exhibit. You have plans in place to rebuild the reptile house. We have the elephant exhibit. You're going to have the gorilla exhibit. You have a number of things that are being done right now that's transforming the zoo significantly. But I'll have Maria go over it.
Maria Cardenas with the CAO's office. The Zoo Capital Improvement Program started in 1999. There was a voter-approved general obligation bond known as Proposition DD that started off with $47 million. The program has grown over the years. With the addition of the expanded elephant exhibit, it would be $169 million, funded from 12 different funding sources, including 2 county propositions, the city proposition CC, Proposition K, which is an assessment fund, about $15 million from GLAZA, the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association, from the Zoo Enterprise Trust Fund, from the Department of Water and Power, from the Sewer Construction and Maintenance Fund, and from MICLA. We have 5 projects that are remaining to be completed, including 3 projects in the Middle Zoo, which is the elephant exhibit, the golden monkey, and the gorilla. After that, we have the reptile house and the insect forest to complete.
Okay, and my purpose for asking the question about the previous bonds is because we asked the voters of Los Angeles to assess themselves for these specific investments, and we've either complied and fulfilled our obligation or we haven't. And so I'm trying to understand this question before us today on the elephant exhibit expansion in the context of the spirit and intent of what the voters of Los Angeles have already expressed to us. My time is running out, so I'll ask one quick question, push my button again. Can you give us a context for the numbers for the zoo, an annual budget, a total budget for the zoo, general fund, special sources, to try to put this $13 million into that context?
The zoo has about 268 position authorities. Their annual budget is about $17 million. They raise through admission fees about $7 million, and the balance of about $10 million comes from the general fund.
And how much additional from GLAZA on an annual basis?
GLAZA doesn't contribute to the zoo's operating budget. They have programs that they pay for, camping and educational programs, but it's not part of the city's $17 million.
Okay.
$1.4 million, according to the zoo, is provided by GLAZA for supplemental programming at the zoo, on top of the $17 million.
Okay, thank you. I'll press my button.
That's separate and apart from the donations for the capital programs. The GLAZA also provided significant funds for the gorilla exhibit. And in a large part, they were funded the gorilla exhibit.
Okay, I'll press my button again.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Our next speaker is Mr. Zine, to be followed by Mr. Reyes, Ms. Gruhl, and Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. John, I respect you as the zoo director. I know I was there at a dinner one evening. We sat at the table. I know your dedication and of your staff. I met with a number of your staff members and their dedication. And Betty White, I've been watching you for many, many years. I know your love for animals. It's interesting that Bob Barker was here recently talking on the other side of the fence regarding this. And the people who are for the elephants, I respect the fact that you're here supporting that, and the people against, I also respect your fact. And this is the body that makes decisions. As a democracy, that's what we do. I've already gone on record saying I don't support the expenditure, number one. I understand what we're talking about with the money, with the MICLA funds, with the other funds. MICLA funds can be used for everything from police cars, police equipment, fire equipment. MICLA funds we use to finance other equipment and other projects. Correct, Mr. Fujioka? Because on the side of my car it says MICLA funded, and that's a car purchased by the City of Los Angeles.
Yes.
So we do use MICLA funds for other equipment. It's not restricted for this.
True.
Now, as far as the measures that the voters passed, that money is restricted for this particular zoo, however we want to enhance it. The slippery slope, and I've heard that mentioned, the slippery slope, that first the elephants, then the rhinos, then the hippos, then this, then that. I would never be supportive of that slippery slope. My position is on the elephants and the elephants alone. Unlike many people who are supporting this, I have been to Africa. I was there on a photo safari. I wasn't shooting animals, but I was there on a photo safari to see how they live in the wild. and to see how the elephants live, see how the giraffes live, see how the other animals live. They talk about the 7 big game of Africa. And I personally witnessed that. I was there for 3 weeks. And I saw how they live in that environment. And when I look at what we're doing to them in the zoo, with all the good intentions that there are, I don't think in the human fashion it's appropriate. One statement. Thank you, cheering section on this side of the room. One statement you made, Mr. Lewis, regarding the living her life, live out her life at the zoo. The intention is to let those 3 elephants live, and I understand that they're not all on exhibit, but for whatever reason, the 3 of them are there. If the intention is to let 1, 2, or 3 live out their life, whatever that lifespan is, versus spending this money enhancing this particular facility and additional elephants coming in, what is the intention? To let the 3 live out their life, or to bring in additional elephants? That's a question that still remains unanswered.
Well, it's both. It's both. And what I said earlier is we're trying to build a facility for the future. And I think that's what we can do for you as well as the public. And I would just make one other comment, that what you've seen at the zoo in the past is not what we're trying to replicate. We are trying to present them more in the context of their environment.
Hold time. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, your time had expired, but you can have one more question after that.
Can you finish?
No, I'm just saying that we are trying to show these animals in the context of their environment, and that's our intent, not to replicate what you have experienced at the zoo in the past.
And I'm a native Angelino. My first experience at the old zoo, and I'll never forget my first experience at the old zoo, it was a wonderful experience as a young child. I'll never forget it, the first time I ever got stung by a bee at the zoo. I'll never forget that, because there's been many bee stings after that. But going to the zoo, I've seen it enhanced, and I totally support that for the children, for the adults, for people to see that. Not everyone has the opportunity to go and see them in the wild. But I still think there's the human aspect, the compassion for the animal that we have enclosed. And again, I'm not going to support this. I've already gone on record. Mr. LaBonge and I have had great discussions about it.
Right.
The financial aspect is one, but the human aspect, the quality care, I don't dispute the fact that you folks are doing what you can do, but I still think from my experience seeing them in the wild, they belong in a natural environment, not in an enclosure. I respect what you're doing. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Reyes. And just before Mr. Reyes speaks, Mr. Smith, I know you have a special introduction. We have some special guests in the back that have joined us.
Mr. President, one of the wonderful things we get to do from time to time here in the council chambers is introduce the future generations of Angelinos, the people who will be making the decisions in our place someday, the kids from the 5th grade of Haskell Elementary School out in the San Fernando Valley. Welcome to Los Angeles. Wave. You're all going to be on TV tonight, so wave.
All right, Mr. Reyes is next, to be followed by Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Council President. For the past few months, if not a couple of years, this debate has been broiling. I've had a very hard time with it. I was speaking to our director of the zoo the other day, came to my office. When I look at this from a big picture point of view of what we're doing as a city, I look at some incredible numbers that are very real for human beings. I look at this city where we have 84,000 people sleeping in the streets, if not in shelters or in cars and vans, because they can't afford to live anywhere in the city of LA. Of those 84,000 individuals, 9,000 are kids. 9,000 are kids sleeping in the streets. Of the total 84,000 that are sleeping in the streets, 30,000 are Latinos. Yet I hear that this is for the kids, this is for education. So again, big picture, folks, how we set our priorities as a city, I'm having a real hard time with this. Now we break down the costs, and we look at $13 million being spent from our MECLA funds that could be spent on other projects that help people as well, perhaps towards the end of getting out of that homeless state. But look at our investment as a city. LASA, which is the group that helps our homeless, has an annual budget that fluctuates between 45 to 60 million. Yet New York spends 640 million for their services, for their homeless. 640 million compared to the 45, 60 that we spend. Now I'm hearing we spend $10 million from a general fund On top of that, the $13 million for this exhibit, which is almost half of the amount of money we spend for Laza for homeless. So to me, this becomes a pivotal point of how we're prioritizing our tax dollars and for whom, and how we are benefiting certain people who are not even in the frame of mind to enjoy these magnificent animals because they're concerned about where they're going to sleep that night or how are they going to feed their children that day. I need to hear more discussion, but right now, I told Tom, look, Tom, looks like I can support you knowing that very little or a small percentage of the funds going to this project is actually coming from general funds, but I'm hearing differently. The MICLA funds could be used for other things.
If I can comment on that, on an annual basis, it's 1.2 million. I can also, I don't think we have the time, but you know, I can identify several dozen projects over the course of time, since I've been your CEO, where we've used MICLA funds to finish those projects. And I mentioned that, you know, the MICLA funds are being used to close the gap. That gap was caused by, I think, it was a decision to expand the size of this exhibit from an original 1.8 acres to now over 3 acres. And also because construction costs have increased. But on an annual basis, it's 1.2. So not that, some people think it's annual 13 every year. No, it's 1.2. Our MICLA program, I think, has been used very wisely and for the purpose it was designed. And it does fill the gap for us and allows us to pay for something through a longer period of time, like 20 years. But to address some immediate needs. There are rec centers, there are libraries, there are pools, there are other civic facilities that would not have been completed. In some instances, there's a police station that would not have been built if not for the MICLA funds. This is what we do. We cannot, if you think about this, and I understand your concern and your focus on the homeless, there's populations throughout the city. I mentioned the number of kids who go there on an annual basis through the LA Unified School District, and that's about 260, 270,000. That does not include the kids who are brought there by the families. Having a big hole, literally an empty area in the middle of the zoo, I think it'd be irresponsible. The other thing, too, to put it in context, if you've seen the old elephant exhibit, it's relatively small. Think about close to 3 football fields, like 2.5 football fields for this 3.5 acres. That's a much larger exhibit. That's a better exhibit. And it's an exhibit that, to a large extent, if you look at it on these storyboards, what's involved and what's offered in these exhibits is a huge improvement.
If I could add one more contextual thing. As Bill said, we're asking for you to consider $1.2 million a year in general funds. Since the current zoo site opened in the mid-60s, 60 million people have attended that institution. During that time, there's been no major investment improvement to this facility we're talking about. So 1.2 for the next several years, for the next generations of all people in Los Angeles and the elephants, I think I think it's a good investment.
And I think finally, Mr. Reyes,
Thank you.
Finally, Mr. Reyes, I think if you assume it's certainly your prerogative, the council's prerogative, to divert to use the 1.2 million for other services. But as I indicated previously, I think you have to keep in mind, as Ms. Cardenas indicated, there are a panoply of funding sources in this. We have essentially tapped every non-general funding source that there is. So you would have to assume that you would leave the middle of the zoo empty, because if you do anything with the middle of the zoo, the chances are that that funding source is going to have to be MICLA. So I would assert that, in fact, in reality, it's unlikely that that money would be available. I think this question truly is about whether the elephant exhibit is appropriate for the area, not whether the council will ultimately be spending the money on the zoo.
So what you're saying is that we will be spending money regardless because of that.
That's correct.
And if we don't move on now, we might be spending more of MICLA because we didn't act on that.
That's correct.
Now, in that note, I would strongly urge for Glaza to step up and bring in even a higher percentage of what they've been doing, because of the fact that we are at a crossroads as a city in how we are managing how a city functions. And to have 84,000 people sleeping in the streets and 9,000 kids in the streets is unacceptable. And those who have the wherewithal to bring more funds to this for that purpose, I think needs to really look hard in the mirror and say, we need to ante up even more.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Gruhl, to be followed by Mr. Rosendahl and then Mr. Padilla for a second time. Ms. Gruhl?
Thank you very much, Mr. Garcetti, and thank you to all the colleagues. This has been a wonderful discussion, and this has not been an easy issue for those of you that are here or those of you listening on TV or by the internet. It's not been an easy issue for any of us because I think all of us are individuals who care very much about the animals at the zoo. I had the pleasure of being liaison actually to the zoo during my time working for Mayor Bradley, and went to 5 different zoos actually when we were looking at fulfilling a new position, or the position of the zoo general manager of the zoo. Now, there's been a lot of passion on both sides, and a lot of people who have taken time, and I appreciate that they have emailed me, we've met on both sides. I want to add as well, which has been stated by a couple of my colleagues, that Tom LaBonge has the highest integrity on this issue. Tom LaBonge has been working on the issue of the zoo since I've known him, which is a very long time, over 20 years. And any suggestion of something otherwise takes away from the arguments that you believe and passionate about the zoo. And so I just want to send that message to everyone. Talk about the issues and not talk about someone on this council that is well respected for his commitment, not only to the zoo, but the entire city of Los Angeles. And I want to make that very, very clear. Some of the questions have been asked about the funding, and so those were some of mine. When you come at the end, you don't get to ask those questions. And I hear Mr. Reyes very clearly, and obviously I worked on the homeless issue for many years, and the investment that this country, this state, and this county and city they've not invested in the issue of homelessness. And I think we're seeing hopefully a change in that in the city of Los Angeles and the county, of saying it is an important issue and we have to look at alternatives. The issue today is not only about the elephants, but it's about zoos. Do we believe that we should have a zoo in the city of Los Angeles? Now, I have a 2.5-year-old who goes to the zoo probably weekly and would like to go daily if he could. And he calls them effluents. He can say elefante in Spanish, but he cannot say elephant in English. He says effluent. But when you go to the zoo, and I don't get to go as often as he does, but you see the people, and I think Mr. Fujioka mentions, the individuals who are going to that zoo, who otherwise would not be able to go to the zoo. I've been to the San Diego Wildlife, I've been to the San Diego Zoo, the St. Louis Zoo, the Atlanta Zoo, you name it, it's been across the country. And you see the people that are experiencing that who otherwise would not see these animals. But what we're talking about today, again, is both wanting to have a zoo, but making sure we're taking care of those animals. And I'd like to see us increase, Tom won't let us do this necessarily either, but, you know, take more land. Our golfers might be upset. No. But I think, you know, and I think, Tom, in this instance where you looked at increasing the size, and I think the questions that Ms. Hahn mentioned were the fact that when you look at the San Diego Wildlife Zoo, I didn't realize, you know, my photograph of how big 3 acres is in comparison, and see that that is going to be a new day at the Los Angeles Zoo. I was here when we tried to move one of the elephants, working in the mayor's office. Moving elephants and them surviving is always difficult. We've had that debate. And in that instance, Hannibal died. And that was tragic. And I have a concern about that occurring as well in a movement as we look at those zoos. I will end because I'm almost a minute over.
Thank you.
But I think the message I want to send is that we deserve a world-class zoo. We deserve a world-class care of our animals, and we deserve a world-class education for our children. And what we're trying to do here today is do all three and create a zoo that we can be proud of and that we can get support. And I challenge people who have written us emails on both sides, no matter what, if you care about the elephants and you care about the zoo, personally invest in the zoo. Don't just talk about it. Put your money where your mouth is and be able to support a zoo that we think is important so the children today and our future. And one of the things we'll talk about with my son is the importance of preserving and caring for animals, whether it be in a zoo or it would be in the wild, wherever it may be, we have to care for animals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gruhl. Our next speaker is Mr. Rosendahl, and then Mr. Padilla. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions real quick, hold my time. To expand elephant exhibit, do we have to relocate other exhibits, and how much will that cost? And is that included in the $40 million estimate, Bill?
Yeah, there is one roundhouse which contains 3 exhibits that will be moved, but it is factored in the cost of this exhibit of returning those spaces around the perimeter of the elephant exhibit.
And Bill, on the second one, the $1.2 million, is this a yearly debt repayment? How many years do we have to repay that? Is that included in the $40 million?
The $1.2 million is not included, and it would represent a payment for about 20 years.
And the next question is the zoo bond money. Does it have to be spent on elephants, or can we use it for other things?
Well, it has to be spent within the zoo and on a zoo-related project.
Okay. Well, thank you. Now I want to make a couple of statements. First, I want to say to the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association, you're terrific. And I've been watching you and looking at you. I see your passion. I see your commitment. And obviously, I see your love of animals. If you didn't love animals and didn't care about it, you wouldn't be taking that kind of personal interest. I also appreciate everything you've said in your testimony. And of course, young people and old people and everybody in between can certainly enjoy the zoo. And you've made the Los Angeles Zoo a much better zoo than it ever was, and my hat's off to all of you for that. You can applaud yourself, you know. It's a positive moment. I want to say to Tom LaBonge that he has the biggest heart around this horseshoe, and he's one of the most decent people I've ever met in my life. And for anybody to impugn his integrity is impugning the integrity of the soul of this council. And I'm outraged to hear somebody question where you're coming from on this issue. Tom, I'm honored to be serving with you around this horseshoe. And to Mimi over there, I didn't know Janice Hahn was Mimi, but I got to tell you, she's my sister, and everything you said about your family and how they look at it reflected in my own mind. My nephew is telling me, don't let the elephants go, but Swam, who's a senior in my house, he says, let them have their freedom. So it's a very personal issue and a very emotional issue. And I want to thank you for bringing that up. And to my colleagues over here who grilled the numbers, we know the fact is it's roughly fresh money, about $13 million. Am I correct on that?
Well, that's the MICLA dollars.
Yeah, and that is the money directed to it. Well, I'm an animal lover, as I'm sure everybody in the room is. We wouldn't be here if we didn't love our animals. And I certainly think the zoo has given the animals the kind of nurturing support that trainers and people who love animals do. I've been to the zoo many times. I go to zoos. I love animals. I personally have a lot of animals. And they give me balance, and they give me a sense of dignity. And we're all connected, the animals and the people. You treat animals right, you treat people right, you make the world a better place. And that's my basic philosophy. But I believe in freeing the elephants. And the reason I believe in freeing them is to make a statement about one of the most massive, most beautiful animals that God has ever created. We have a sanctuary up the road a piece that they could be led to. I, too, have seen elephants in the wild. I've been all over the world. I've been blessed to see elephants everywhere, and I love elephants. And to have a namesake like Billy, my name's Billy, it's even personal with me about this. But my gut tells me that it's that time that we stood up and we basically said, we're living in the 21st century. It's time that we respect our elephants to the degree that we give them their freedom and put them in a sanctuary. I'm going to vote that way.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. We have two speakers, Mr. Weiss and Mr. Padilla.
Mr. President, I was going to call the question. I know we have a member who needs to make a flight, but there's a member on the queue, and I don't want to get in the way of that.
It shouldn't take too long. I just have a couple more questions.
If a member has to make a flight, is the...
Okay. We can take a vote on the question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Padilla, ask him very speedy. Go
Okay.
ahead.
This is withdrawn. Mr. Padilla.
And I do respect Ms. Hahn needs to catch a flight. She's got her boarding pass, so we're going to make this quick. Specific question, part of our financial responsibility here. Part of this project is to be funded via MICLA. That's what's before us today. There's commitments from GLAZA, other private donations. Is there a requirement or a deadline by which the private money needs to be in place before the MICLA monies take effect?
Once we go to bid the project out, we have to have the monies all collected and available for that project. And GLAZA, on their $4.5 million commitment, they have $2.4 million already in their bank, and they have committed to provide that money when it's required by the city, even if that means securing a loan secured against their endowment fund.
But only because I don't want to be in a position where we're back here a year from now saying, well, the MICLA money was helpful, but the private money didn't come through.
Right.
So, Mr. CIO, do you feel the safeguards are in place?
No, I'm very comfortable with the commitment from GLAZA. This is a different GLAZA than in the past. It's a GLAZA that's, as evidenced through their commitment with our gorilla exhibit and today's commitment to the elephant exhibit, that the money will be there.
Okay. Well, so that Mr. Labange can take a deep breath and his heart can start beating again as big as it is, I'm going to support this today because of the information that's been presented to me. But hold on. Shh. I'm going to ask you to stop clapping because we've got to get Ms. Hahn to the airport. But I do want to make this statement because a couple council members acknowledged it. Somebody suggested during public comment that the kids today, it's a different world, they're of a different generation. They see everything via the internet. And I disagree. Ms. Gruhl, I think, had it right. This isn't a question of money. It's a question of, do we want to have a zoo in this city, yes or no? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's a choice. But I believe that not only should we have a zoo, but if we're going to have a zoo, we got to do it right. And part of doing it right is allowing for more space. And if in the future, if research shows, studies show, experience shows that we're going to need more space, then we'll have to grapple with that question and that funding challenge at that point in time. But as somebody who has enjoyed the zoo, and as somebody whose family has enjoyed the zoo, I do think it is a valuable treasure to have for all the people of Los Angeles. I'm going to be a little poetic here in honor of our president. Just a couple weeks ago, Mr. Garcetti, you and the mayor brought in the producers and creators of the movie Crash. And if you all remember that movie, the opening scene is at a crash scene. And Don Cheadle is talking about how in Los Angeles sometimes we crash into each other just to feel something. Because sometimes we don't have that human interaction, that emotion, those senses. Well, if we're going to relegate the children of Los Angeles to only experiencing wildlife via the internet, I think we're doing them a tremendous disservice. I think the kids and the families of Los Angeles deserve to see elephants and many other species live at the zoo. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was our final speaker on the queue. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? If not, we have the vote before us, colleagues. Mr. Clerk, will you please reiterate the recommendation?
There are 6 recommendations within the Budget and Finance and Arts, Parks, Health and Aging Committee report. Do you want me to detail all of those?
No, I think folks are clear on what both of those reports entail. Colleagues will now take the vote. If we can please open the roll on the item. Everybody's votes are in. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes, 2 noes.
Mr. Labange?
Mr. President, I ask we go forthwith.
We'll forthwith on that. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 2 is the appointment of Mr. Lee Turner to the Quality and Productivity Commission.
Excuse me, what's the next one? Excuse me, Mr. Clerk, if you'll repeat that next time?
Yes, Mr. President, it's item 2, which is the appointment of Mr. Lee Turner to the Quality and Productivity Commission.
Mr. Turner, would you like to come forward? Thank you for your patience this morning. Colleagues, we have a commissioner appointment before us right now. You can please ask everybody to turn their attention. This is from the Quality and Productivity Commission, excuse me. So, Mr. Weezer, as a chair of Audits and Government Efficiency, would you like to introduce our nominee? If I can please respectfully ask people to keep their conversations and take those outside. We thank you very much for coming here today and sharing your views and opinions with us today. Mr. Weezer.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm pleased to introduce today Mr. Turner, Mr. Lee Turner, who is being recommended via your office for the Quality and Productivity Commission. We had Mr. Turner before the Audits Committee yesterday. We were thoroughly impressed with his qualifications and thoughts about his views on the Quality and Productivity Commission. I'm here to ask for your support today and to also ask Mr. Turner if you could share with the council your thoughts. Well, first, if you could please give us a little bit about your background and also your thoughts on what you bring to this commission and your views and visions for this commission.
Thank you. My background is I'm a real estate professional for the last 35, 40 years. I have worked as a general contractor. I've been the president of the board. I have did a lot of building, not only in California, but outside of California as well. So my real expertise really comes from the real estate development as well as real estate financing. I've taught real estate practice in college.
Thank you very much. And what are your thoughts about the commission and what you see it doing and what you bring to it?
Well, when the Councilman Parks has spoken to me about this, I felt very honored that I'd be considered. One of the things that I was interested in, because as most citizens, I think the city spends too much money. And so perhaps that I'll get to understand why they spend that money and not be so critical. But I would think that the Quality and Productivity Commission would be about really looking for ways of getting better quality, more productivity, and really looking at efficiency in terms of how we can really, you can make a lot of money, but if you don't spend it correctly, obviously you're going to be short of money all the time. I was in a conversation with a member, and a suggestion was made that the city of Los Angeles is 15 years behind private industry and technology. And I'm just wondering just how much money we're losing just because of that very reason. So I think that what I bring to the commission is really looking for ways how we can be a better city in terms of how we spend our dollars.
Thank you very much, and I do think that oftentimes, as you said, it's not an issue of money. We have some great programs sometimes with a lot of money, and if we could break through some of the bureaucracy to get those funding where we need it, to find ways to better provide services in light of these days when we have to make so many budget cuts. And one thing as the chair of the audits that I'm moving to do more is to have better communication between my committee and this commission so that we share ideas, talk about what's working, what's not working, and find ways to better serve the residents of the city of Los Angeles, and also to do it in a more efficient manner and put the money where it really is needed. So thank you so much for your willingness to serve the city of Los Angeles, and thank you, Council President, for recommending Mr. Turner. I do believe also it was brought forward as a recommendation from Councilmember Parks, Chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Parks is our next speaker, and then Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Turner, one of the reasons I think you've talked about your background and development, but one of the things I think was so important for me to recommend you is your activism in the community and being a part of the CACs and things of that nature. And I'd like you to comment on that because, in my judgment, that's where the rubber meets the road, where people are volunteering their time and participating actually in day-to-day work of the city.
Well, I'm really concerned about the community in terms of where we're going, what our future is. I'm concerned about our children, their legacy we leave for them. I'm concerned about the fact that perhaps the area where that we live and work, that the economy is not what it should be, and that as a member of the CAC and other organizations I'm a member in the community, that's what we work for. We're trying to really have a better economy. We're trying to, we want better buildings. We want more businesses in our community. We want more local business ownership, as well as we want to have jobs that are measurable in terms of union scale. And with that, we will have a better economy.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I feel very strongly in supporting Mr. Turner, not only because of his lovely wife, Mrs. Turner, and their team, and they work so diligently in the 8th District on a variety of things, and not only the CAC involvement, but just in the general issue of development, and very involved in the specific plan. He did not have gray hair when he started working on the specific plan. It took us 10 years to get that. But those are the kind of things he's done, and I think he brings an operational and a day-to-day understanding to this whole issue of this committee dealing with productivity. And from its business background, certainly he understands there's two sides of the ledger. You make money and you have that, but if you don't spend it properly, and if you don't spend it wisely, you've wasted a great deal of effort to earn that money. And so I would strongly suggest that we support this nomination, and so that he can become an active part of our commission family in the city of LA.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. And Mr. Turner, that's far less gray hair than most specific plans yield, so I think you're doing okay. Mr. Wesson is our next speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President and members. I too rise to wholeheartedly support the confirmation of Mr. Turner. He is no stranger to this area, and he's no stranger to public service. With his business background and his commitment to not just the 8th District, but the entire region, I think he brings a wide variety of skills to this commission, and will be a very active and productive member. And on a serious note, if anybody here is engaged in a golf tournament, please get Mr. Turner to participate with you, and he will ensure that your foursome is in contention. He even almost made me win once, and that takes a lot of work. My game is so bad I could destroy Tiger Woods' game, but Mr. Turner stayed focused, and I think we lost by a couple strokes. But anyway, I'm excited about the possibility of working with you in the future, and I know without a doubt you're going to do a phenomenal job. Welcome aboard, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. Ms. Gruhl is our next speaker.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. People have talked about Mr. Turner's qualifications, but we chatted as well in audits and government efficiency about his ability to use his real estate background to talk about some of the things that are happening in the city. And since he hasn't been inside the city, sometimes an outside voice can have some common sense ideas. And so just look forward to you being part of that commission. I think with the mayor and the council really putting a premium on the issue of efficiency, that this is going to continue to be a commission that matters, and to be able to save money here in the city of Los Angeles and provide more services. So we look forward to your passion and commitment as a member of this commission. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. With that, that's our last speaker. Let's open the roll on the nomination. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have one more? Mr. Zine, I'm sorry, late entry. Mr. Zine.
Mr. Turner, I just wanted to congratulate you. I assume that's your wife?
Yes.
For your patience. And I saw you and your wife sitting there from before 10 o'clock, and it's now 10 minutes after 12. I want to commend you on your patience. I don't know you personally, but I will attest to your patience listening to all the debate that we had this morning, and welcome on board.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zine. And with that, let's prepare the roll on the nomination and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Congratulations, Commissioner. Welcome aboard. All right, next item, please.
Item 6 was called special by Councilmember Parks, and I do believe there was a request to continue that to Friday.
Okay, we have a motion to reconsider 42. We actually had some cards that came in. We didn't do the public hearing, so that'll be automatically reconsidered.
Attaboy, Mr. President.
And then did folks want to continue? Is that what people are saying, or there's some contention about that? Should we wait?
Want to bring it back for discussion, reconsideration.
Okay. We'll hold on the table right now then? No?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'm adjourned,
Sure.
I'm excused in about 3 minutes.
Okay, so would you like to
I'd
continue?
appreciate if you could hear that now, and if we can
Okay.
resolve the issues today, that'd be great. If not, then we'll...
All right, let's take up item 42 then, right now. We have 2 speaker cards. We have Ralph Ochoa for the proposal, and Dan Kreinbring from LAUSD against the proposal. If you'd like to come forward, each will have 2 minutes to comment on item number 42. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Ralph Ochoa. I'm an attorney, and currently I'm representing on this issue the Oxnard School District. It's regarding Assembly Bill 2221 and the current resolution before you, which we hope you would concur in supporting that resolution in AB 2221. Why the bill? Currently, the State Allocation Board, which serves as the state bank for local school districts wishing to procure state matching funds to construct new school facilities, does not have an opportunity to review applications from local school districts for the state matching funds until the very end of the application process. While the State Department of Education staff, as well as the Office of Public School Construction staff, review a local school district's application to ensure that it meets the minimum standard requirements outlined in state statute. There are many times when the SAB or the State Allocation Board members, many of whom are elected officials, would appreciate the opportunity to review such applications earlier in the process in order to determine whether potentially controversial or political issues may exist, which state staff may not have foreseen. The resolution, Assembly Bill 2221. This bill would give the State Allocation Board members an opportunity to review potentially controversial issues associated with school district applications for state matching funds earlier in the process, before significant time and money are wasted by both the school district and the state. Only those school districts wishing to build on a potentially controversial site using state funding would be required to submit copies at an earlier required report to the State Education Board. Just like to
Thank you,
point out
Mr.
very
Ochoa. If I can
quickly,
ask
I'm
you
sorry.
to conclude your comments
The
now.
genesis is that in representing Oxnard School District, we wanted to site a campus 2 miles from an airport. Not ideal. We had a legal victory, but it was Jackie Goldberg on the allocation board who said she'd hold her nose while voting for this. This is just a review and comment. It does not cause a delay for those schools or applications that would like
Thank you,
to
Mr.
get the
Ochoa.
site.
We appreciate your testimony. Dan?
Good morning, Council President. My name is Dan Kreinbring. I'm with Los Angeles Unified School District. AB 2221 does exactly that. It does delay the school district. It adds another layer of bureaucracy to a very complex system of approvals with the state. What this will do is this will delay school construction. It will obstruct us from building schools and providing seats to relieve overcrowding. This bill also constrains us on several site options. It mentioned in the bill about not being able to use surplus military sites. These are vacant sites. These are sites that right now we're looking at a potential project in San Pedro High School on a site that's vacant versus building in an urban environment where there's homes and commercial. This would also impact 450 North Grand right up the street, our art school, the school that the board just approved, and it's going to be one of our flagship schools right across from the cathedral. This bill does not offer any value-added component to our processes at LAUSD. What this does do is delay us, and it delays us in a time of increased construction cost, and it would cost the taxpayers a lot of money. I would urge you to oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Weezer has pressed the button. Did you want to open before that? Yes, please.
Just a couple points. First of all, to suggest that somehow Jackie Goldberg would write a bill that hurts LA Unified, I think is an absurd assumption to begin with. Jackie Goldberg's not going to write a bill that delays the process of citing schools. What this does is add a review process in, a 60-day comment period, in really problematic sites. And that's all she's talking about here. If you have a problematic site, and we certainly have some in the city of LA, but it's a 60-day process of comment. Now, my experience with LA Unified staff is they don't want comment public to review, but that's another issue. Let me just say a few words, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Karsh. First of all, the bill only looks at proposed new sites and facilities within 500 feet of intersections, of interstates, landfills, airports, railroad tracks, or former military land. The potential usage of military sites would trigger review and comment, not outright prohibition. Amended language does not create an oversight committee. This is a 60-day review and comment period so that that board does not have to, at the end of the cycle, say, wait, we've got objections, this is problematic. This lets it take place in the front end of it in those certain circumstances only. And I think LA Unified's arguments are flawed in saying that the state board does not have technical expertise and comment to select school sites. That's part of what they need to do, but I really believe that Ms. Goldberg had the best intentions in mind, is not to delay the citing of schools, is to assist the public of having a word in the citing of those schools in the front end of the process. Worst case scenarios, it may delay by 60 days a citing of a school. I don't think that is a critical thing that we give up. And if we want public involvement in citing of schools, and some of us have had those kind of problems. Mr. Zine had that problem. I had that problem. I think it's an appropriate bill. The important thing is, ladies and gentlemen of the council, this goes to the committee for final vote next Tuesday. If we send this back to committee and don't act upon it today, we lose our chance to put our voice in the matter, because the legislature's in that last few weeks of getting bills moved on out of their policy committees. So this is the time, if we're going to do this, to state our position. Again, I think Ms. Goldberg would not have written a bill that in any way delays or hurts LA Unified or any school district in the state of California. So I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our next speaker is Mr. Huizar, then Mr. Reyes, and then Mr. Cardenas. Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me stand up with my strong opposition to having the City Council support this piece of legislation. I served on the Board of Education for 4.5 years, and I've seen firsthand the difficulty there is in building schools in our district. And yes, this district hasn't been the friendliest in working with other agencies and getting and selecting the right sites. I've often fought our bureaucracy to make sure that we had and provided as much public input as possible. But this is going backward. One of the reasons why LAUSD had so many problems in being able to site schools and build schools was because there were so many obstacles put in place to jump through in order to get a preferred site. Now we're adding another step. And today, siting a school and building a school goes through some of the most complicated bureaucratic agencies in the state than any other public resource that we're building. We're going to add another layer and possibly add additional costs in building these schools. And given the number and how difficult it is for LAUSD to go forward and find a preferred site, we're going to get behind other school districts as we get in line at the State Allocation Board to make sure we get our funding. I think this is putting more obstacles in place of providing our children here in the city of Los Angeles to find the schools they need, and it's going to go backward and not forward in finding ways to improve how we're building our schools. Finally, let me say, the first phase of building schools, the school district embarked on building 80 new schools. Everyone wanted schools. We hadn't built schools in over 30 years. We're finally doing that. The second phase is building 40 schools. It's going to be more difficult. People are beginning to see the schools. People are saying, well, okay, they're happening. We really don't need that many. Plus, there's less and less land. As it gets more difficult, our challenge is to have the city work closer with the district to find ways here locally by which they take more input from local council members and the city in citing schools. The answer is not adding more loopholes to jump through for this district. The answer is to find ways here locally to work better with the school district to cite these schools. On top of that, it also limits where the district can build schools. We already have a number of state regulations as to where we can cite the schools. We're not going to cite them where they're dangerous for our children. A number of state regulations already exist, but it will limit the choices that local communities have and the school district has, at least to put things on the table as possible options. We should put everything on the table as options and not limit what they can look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huizar. Next is Mr. Reyes, then Mr. Cardenas, and then Ms. Perry. Mr. Reyes.
Council President, I'd like to ask if I can ask Mr. Cardenas to speak before because I just need to know more about what's happening here, because it's coming pretty fast and furious. So I'd like to postpone my turn and speak later.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas?
Thank you very much. Actually, Mr. Smith is correct. The House of Origin deadline is next week. With all due respect, the resolution on behalf of the City of Los Angeles is not likely going to weigh in that heavily when it comes to an assembly member's bill getting out of his or her house. The real battle is going to be in the other house, where the scrutiny tends to be a little bit different flavor. We will probably testify as individuals or as a city when it gets to that other house as this bill changes language. It's my understanding that right now the author of the bill, Juan Vargas, is actually working with the district and others throughout the state to try to fine-tune the language. If you read the bill, as a matter of fact, just so you understand the way language changes in the legislature on bills, this bill was a spot bill. This bill had language that has been totally gutted, and the new language is different. This bill is going to go through some changes. In my personal opinion, after having read the bill in its current form and knowing that the current author is open to changing portions of the language to make it much more amenable to districts like this Los Angeles district and other very crowded school districts, I think it would be premature for us to go ahead and support the bill in its present form. I may be willing to support the bill in another week or so when they change the language. But right now, I think it would be premature for us to do that. The language is evolving and changing. The way the language stands right now, I do agree with a school district that I've been personally very frustrated with sometimes when it comes to the work that they've been doing in my district to build schools, and when it comes to citing and communicating with the community or what have you. But I don't want to allow that frustration to overshadow the issue at hand. And the issue at hand is the bill in its present form going to cause problems for this district for building schools for these children? And as Mr. Smith pointed out to me a little while ago, the bill, the way it's written right now, all it's doing is delaying for 60 days the State Allocation Board's decision. That 60 days is critical. The way the state of California works, people get in line, they put their applications in line, and then they either get the allocation or they don't. They get the allocation, it gets reserved. It could be revoked later throughout the process if, in fact, they don't meet the other requirements. The problem that I have with the bill right now, the way I understand it, is it would preclude the city of the LAUSD, for example, and other districts to be able to go ahead and get in line and then actually identify a site or sites and then get that money allocated currently. Secondly, it's my understanding, it just came to my attention, that Jackie Goldberg in its present form does not support the bill. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just wanted to say that. Hopefully we can get somebody from Jackie Goldberg's office to let us know how she feels about the bill. But it's my understanding in its present form she does not support the bill. By the way, the author of the bill is not Jackie Goldberg, it is Juan Vargas.
Thank you, Ms. Perry, followed by Mr. Reyes, Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Rosendahl, and then Mr. Smith for a second time. Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a very, oh, you want to go ahead? No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Very quick comment. I had extensive experience with working with LAUSD. I just need to put this on the record. As a person who's probably enjoyed the greatest benefit of having the most new schools in my council district in the last 4 years, I have enjoyed that fact, but it's also been a very difficult process. Many times LAUSD goes directly to our city departments without working with the council office and contacting the community in a comprehensive manner to lock us in to provide the infrastructure support to go ahead and build the schools with what without doing what I consider to be a thoroughly exhaustive outreach strategy. And while I support them as often as I can, I often am at loggerheads with them, and I can just name chapter and verse on the schools where we've had it out. In addition to that, I've tried very hard to direct them to parcels that have been assembled and that are blighted or underutilized and are magnets for crime. And in many, many cases where they have chosen instead to continue to do the traditional, very hackneyed approach of going and taking people's homes, which is something I believe in this district can absolutely be avoided in almost every instance. And so I will be supportive of going back and doing some revision on the language, but I needed to say that on the record because it's not all roses all the time. And while I do appreciate their mission and what they do, I need to say that on behalf of the community that they need to change the paradigm in the way that they approach site acquisition and siting of schools.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes, I'm sorry. No, you okay? Okay. Ms. Gruhl is next, and then Mr. Rosendahl.
I have a question. I'm not sure who can answer this question. And I share Ms. Perry's concern, and I think Mr. Cardenas as well. I've had my own challenges in my district about the kind of coordination and siting, et cetera. And I think, but one question I have real quick, maybe Mr. Wiesar, you made a point about that this would put the city of Los Angeles, or the school board in Los Angeles, kind of far behind, or we might not be able to compete. But this will affect all school districts in the state, this legislation?
I believe it will. What I meant is, oftentimes in order to receive funding from the state allocation board, there's a formula that exists when you get there. If we have to wait an additional 60 days where it takes longer for LAUSD to find sites, there's other school districts that have things to go because they're not as overcrowded, it's not as difficult to site schools, so they will be able to get in front of the line before LAUSD, because it already takes longer for LAUSD to find a site given the density, the overcrowding that we have here. We don't want to take homes, et cetera. We will be further down the line.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Again, and Mr. Cardenas, I take to heart what you said about the language changing, and that hopefully that Mr. Vargas and the school district had come to some decision. I don't know Mr. Smith or Mr. Reyes, makers of the motion. Mr. Smith, sorry. A question about whether or not, I mean, there's specific language in the Vargas, whether or not you're amending your motion to say, generally we agree with the spirit of what has been proposed, and so that we're not opposing what they're suggesting, but that the language be worked out. I mean, that we make it a little bit more generic, so we're not specific to some of the things that might change in the discussions between LAUSD and Mr. Vargas between now and Tuesday, and so that our vote is more from the spirit of it. I don't know if you're interested in that kind of amendment.
Well, that might be possible. We always have the ability to withdraw our support if they change it significantly, and I think the legislative analysts can address that issue. But if they change that bill significantly enough that it's different than what we vote on today, then we could always put that in there, say if it changes significantly from what we supported today, then we withdraw our support and we'll take it back.
I think all of us are cognizant, and we got the letter from the Oversight Committee, LAUSD, that some of the concerns that they've raised, and not poo-poo them and say they're not important.
No, I think the important thing is that some of the things they said in their letter are incorrect, and that's why I think Mr. Karsh ought to come forward and give us the latest status on some of those issues in the bill, so you know exactly what the status today is on those points.
Okay. So mine, again, as we just have the further discussion, my interest would be to get something from this body that says we're not opposed to a review, but want to see that some of LAUSD's concerns are addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. When my colleague, Mr. Cardenas, mentioned the spot bill business, that's basically, you save a spot and then you work it all out. So frankly, I think we should just send this back to committee, take a deep breath, see how the dynamic works up there, and then when we see what they're really coming up with, then we should make a statement on it. I think this is premature. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, second time, Mr. Cardenas, and then Mr. Wiesar.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to have Mr. Karsh come forward. There's been a lot of issues brought up here, and I think we need to ask those questions to Mr. Karsh as far as the current status of the bill, what's in the bill now, and what will be up in committee on next Tuesday, in particular as it addresses the LA Unified's complaints. So, Mr. Karsh, if you would, you heard some of the complaints. This is going to delay them, take them out of line, make it impossible for them to compete equally, even though every school district has to do this. Mr. Weezar's concerns is because LA Unified has less land, more problematic land, that other districts won't have to do this. So where is the legislation as far as the language on what LA Unified or all the districts in the state would have to do as far as this bill goes? What kind of properties are they talking about? And hold time.
Tricia Carey with the CLA. The recent amendment to the bill added a provision that school districts could not use current or former military sites to put proposed school sites on, unless, of course, they met some certain reporting requirements and sent that forth to the state that there were no significant environmental impacts. According to the bill, and as I have read it and understand it, it ups the reporting requirements to the state allocation board to allow them 60 days to respond to the school district. And if the school district does not take those considerations into effect when citing a school, that it warns them that they could lose funding with regards to the school site.
Okay, is that the latest version of the bill? Because I understand that's been taken out.
No, this is April 17th.
This is.
All right. You don't have your act together. All right. Yeah. I think maybe Ms. Gruel's suggestion is we just pass a motion in general support of the concept, and then let's watch the bill as it comes back through committee and it comes out of committee onto the next level, and to determine if then we have objections to the final drafting of it. Maybe there's a better way to do that. And we support the idea of public comment periods, that we want to see public comment in the process, but if it in some way restricts the ability of LA Unified to cite schools, then we would withdraw our support. Does that work for everybody? Mr. Weezar?
We're giving up too much there, and we don't know, even you asked right now, was that still in the bill? We're not all sure what's in that bill, and even if we support it in concept, it's harder for us to withdraw our support than us to say, I think we would put ourselves in a much better position if we say, let's hold on until you really clear this up, and then we decide whether we support it or not. We're giving up too much if we say we support it in concept and then try to withdraw our support. Because even after we say we support it, and then we come back and say we're withdrawing our support, the message is out there already that we're supporting it, and people may not get that second message that we're withdrawing our support because we don't finally agree with the bill. If we wait and we send one clear message, we'll be in a better position.
In the interest of time and all those concerns, I'll be happy to take this back to committee if someone will make the motion. Thank you.
Mr. Reyes?
Yeah, Council President, I was going to suggest that if we're going to go to vote, mine would be an amendment to send it back to committee to see what happens.
Okay.
But since he's already said he's willing to just let it sit to see what happens, that's fine.
Okay.
And what committee would this go to?
All right, we have that motion before us. We have Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Wesson, Mr. Weezar, and Mr. Reyes on the queue. Do you still want to speak?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Reyes?
No, I just want to say, clarify, which committee will we send this to?
Intergovernmental.
IGR?
Intergovernmental Relation?
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. President, so the motion before us is to send it to IGR?
To IGR, that's correct. Okay. All right. If there's no...
Thank you. I want to
yes.
state for the record, Mr. President, thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for your understanding and working with everyone interested in this to find a good solution.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's open the roll on that recommendation, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, that will be sent back to committee, almost called International Government Affairs, Intergovernment Affairs. All right, next item, please.
Item 17 was called special by Councilmember Parks.
Mr. Parks, item 17.
First of all, I'd like to see if we get item 3 forthwith. On 17, just a motion to accept the Budget and Finance report.
Was that number 3 you said?
On number 3 forthwith.
Actually, when we voted on that, we didn't have 12 members. Would you like to, let's reconsider all the ordinances from today, please? That'll be items 3, 4, and...
Actually, just 3 and 4.
Just 3 and 4, because 18 was sent back, that's correct. Let's open the roll in reconsideration, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
And if nobody wishes to be heard, let's open the roll on 3 and 4, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That now passes in the first reading, now that we have 12 members, and let's send 3 forthwith on that. And We have now circulated the motion on 17,
No, just that we want to accept the budget and finance report.
the budget and finance report. Okay.
And then also on number 6, if we could continue that to Friday because the material is not available.
Did we do that, Mr. Clerk?
That's already been done.
Okay, we did that. Let's open the roll on 17 on that motion then by Mr. Parks for the budget and finance report, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. That leaves item 37, which was called special by card from the public, and a very patient Candido Mares. Like to come forward.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. I'm here to oppose AB 2021. For this council and for this mayor to give up authority in setting policy for DWP would be outrageous. It is your duty to protect the ratepayers of this great city. There have been many great strides in the last 9 months made by the commissioners, the new commissioners. They're absolutely fabulous. They're tightening the belts over there. They're getting rid of the bad apples. We're seeing a lot of great things take place. But again, you represent the people of this great city. You must not give that control over to anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mares. We appreciate your patience and your testimony today. Anybody wishing to be heard on this? If not, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Let's reconsider items 13 and 36 if there is no objection. Let's open the roll on those, close the roll, and tabulate the vote. And those are
11 ayes.
reconsidered. 13, we have an amending motion that has been circulated, and let's take that one up first. Does anybody wishes to be heard on that? If not, let's prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. And then on item 36, we have a substitute motion. Did I misspeak? Did I say 37? Did I say okay, 36. We have 36. We have a substitute motion, and that has also been circulated, Mr. Clerk?
That has.
Okay. Anybody wishes to be heard on that one? If not, please prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved as well. And I think that finishes our agenda. Any housekeeping, Mr. Clerk?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Okay, those are posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Parks requests to be excused May 2nd and 3rd for city business. That meets council policy.
Mr. Parks is excused.
Councilmember Perry requests to be excused to arrive at 11:30 on May 3rd and to arrive at 11 a.m. on June 28th, both for city business, and they both meet council policy.
All right, Ms. Perry is excused for both of those dates.
That clears the desk.
All right, any announcements, colleagues? Do we have any announcements today? Yes, Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Many of you may have heard this morning that there was a case of bubonic plague in my district. A woman who lives in the Country Club Park contracted this disease, and she's being treated by the health department, and it looks like everything's going to be okay. But what I wanted to say is in the discussions that we've had with the county health officials, they want everybody to remain calm. There are some suggestions, however, that they have just so individuals could feel secure. You cannot get this disease from another human being. They come from fleas and ticks and other rodents and wild animals. I do think that it would be appropriate for individuals to trim their ivy and ground cover in their yards to make sure that their pets are tick and flea free, and if they can, spray their yards. And if anybody has any concerns, they can call two different numbers. There's a vector management program where they can call 626-430-5450, or there's a health information hotline at 800-427-8700. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson, for that information and for alleviating any possible panics about that. Any other announcements? Mr. Padilla, do you have an announcement?
Want to announce for the Pacoima community, today is the monthly Pacoima Neighborhood Council meeting. Meeting starts at 6:30 at the Pacoima Youth and Family Center, located on the corner of Glen Oaks and Van Nuys Boulevard. And also for everybody served by the Mission Area Police Station, the Mission Area CPAB meeting takes place tonight at 6:30 at the station on Sepulveda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Padilla. Other announcements, colleagues? Mr. Parks?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to announce the Crenshaw Chamber monthly meeting will be tomorrow, April the 20th. It will be held in the Crenshaw Plaza Community Room, and the time is 8 a.m. Also, the monthly Urban Issues Breakfast Forum, Friday, April 21st, 7:30 a.m. to 9:30, will be held in the Grand Reserve Room in the Staples Center. And also, one of our coalitions in the 8th District for Smoke-Free Los Angeles Parks is having their major cleanup of Algin Sutton Rec Center, 8800 South Hoover, on April 22nd at 10 a.m. to 12. And the final announcement is that we had a motion that went through the council in which we supported legislation for the Tuskegee Airmen to receive a Congressional Gold Medal. We just advised in the last couple of days that the President did sign that legislation and that now the Tuskegee Airmen join such people as our first President George Washington, the Wright brothers, Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and a variety of others that have been honored by the President to receive a Congressional Gold Medal.
Thank you very much. Other announcements? Not, do we have any adjourning motions today, colleagues? We do. Can I please ask everybody in council chambers to rise as we conduct our adjourning motions and the folks who have passed, starting with Mr. Weezer.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adjourn today in memory of Mr. Manuel Alvarez. Mr. Alvarez is the father of Maricela Alvarez, who is the wife of former Councilmember Nick Pacheco. Mr. Alvarez passed away this past Friday, on Good Friday, April 14th, of cancer. He was 86. He was born on January 22nd, 1920, in the town of Tepic, Nayarit, in Mexico. He immigrated to the United States in the late 1940s. He raised his family locally and is survived by his wife, Francisca Alvarez. He's also survived by his 11 children, including the former council member's wife, Maricela Alvarez. And just to let them know that our thoughts and prayers are with them. Thank you.
We'll do all members on that, and saddened to hear that from Mr. Pacheco as well. Mr. Labange.
Members, I'd like to ask we adjourn in memory of Patricia Lusinger, who lived to be 53 years old, left this world far too young. She worked for the City of Los Angeles since 1997 and is recently with our library department. She was loved by many of her friends for her enthusiastic approach to life. She's survived by many cousins as well as her city friends and colleagues at the library department. I ask we adjourn in memory of Patricia Lusinger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Mr. Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of both Councilmember Cardenas and myself, I want to ask that we adjourn in memory of Kathleen Sue Caruth, a resident of the 6th Council District. She passed away on Tuesday, April 11th, from complications due to diabetes. Her family moved to Van Nuys at her age of 3, and she resided in the same home for the next 56 years. She attended Cohasset Street Elementary School, Fulton Junior High School, and Birmingham High School. She worked for the state Senate for 19 years, beginning her career with then Senate President Pro Tem David Roberti, continuing on to serve the people of the Valley under Senators Herschel Rosenthal and most recently Senator Richard Alarcon. In her children's earlier years, she was the quintessential PTA mom, volunteering at the children's school constantly, and was team mother for their hockey teams. When she was a grandmother, she was then team mom for her grandchildren's softball teams. She is survived by 2 brothers, 3 children, and 7 grandchildren.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Mr. Parks, do you have any? No. Mr. Rosendahl.
Yes, Mr. President, I have 4 to mention. First is Maggie Zaz, who was a well-known Brentwood activist. Maggie was the first vice president of PACT, and it was her idea to call it that. That's the Police and Community Together organization. And that's the least of it. Maggie's main thrust was not mainstream. She was one of the founders of New Directions at the Veterans Administration, where they rehab vets with alcohol and drug-related problems. Maggie was also president of the Kenter Canyon PTA for several years and received the Paul Harris Award for Outstanding Community Services in 1996. She's going to be remembered in a memorial service this Thursday, April 20th, at University Synagogue at 6 p.m. in the evening. May she rest in peace. The other is a member of the family here, the passing of Jackson Lynn, a civil engineer associated with the Bureau of Engineering for over 16 years, passed away in his home on Saturday, April 8th, 2006, at the young age of 41. Jackson joined the city in August of 1989 and worked in the Bureau of Engineering's wastewater program for the entire city career. He was a talented and resourceful engineer and made a great contributions to a number of major watershed projects throughout his career with the city. He possessed a vast knowledge of engineering principles and was relied upon by his peers as an expert in the field of wastewater system design. He will be deeply missed by the Bureau of Engineering, especially by his co-workers at the Wastewater Conveyance Engineering Division, where he will be remembered for his smiles and friendly conversation. Jackson loved his family very much and was very close to them. He's survived by his parents Stephen and Chu Mai Lin and brother Calvin and sister Teresa. May he rest. Thank you.
Mr. LeBon, second.
I'd also like to ask that we adjourn in memory of Cecil McGee. Cecil, a longtime resident of Venice Beach, who used to sell incense on the oceanfront walk, died suddenly on Good Friday, reportedly from an embolism. He was only 42 years old. Cecil was beloved by literally hundreds of friends who were attracted to his gentle smile, his deep sense of spirituality, and his remarkably mellow nature. He was a friend to so many and was a shining example of humble service and of enjoying every moment of life to the fullest. A memorial service will be held at 5 p.m. Sunday at the Venice Breakwater. And my last is another soldier, Giovanni Padilla Alman. He was only 20 years old. He was from Southgate, California. He was a hospital man in the Navy. Padilla Alman was killed in action April 2nd in Al-Abar province, west of Baghdad. He was permanently assigned to Bethesda Naval Hospital, U.S. Naval Service Comfort Detachment, and operationally assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment, 228 Brigadier Combat Team. May he rest in peace.
I'd like to second that. All members? Mr. Zine.
Clyde Porter passed away April 18th. Clyde Porter was born in Santa Monica on September 9th, 1926. Clyde was the president and CEO of P.L. Porter Company in Woodland Hills. Clyde co-founded the Valley Cultural Center, Haven Hills, Concerts in the Park, and the West Valley Playhouse. He had been a board member of the Woodland Hills Chamber of Commerce and the Woodland Hills Rotary. As an active Rotarian, he has donated over $100,000 to its charitable projects. Clyde was a board member and benefactor of the Valley Symphony and a major supporter of the LA Opera, LA Philharmonic, the Pasadena Playhouse, the Amundsen, Geffen, Actors Co-op, and Colony Theaters, as well as the soon-to-be-built major performing arts center at CSUN. Clyde Porter was a recipient of the Valley Cultural Center's first annual 2005 Humanitarian Award and the recipient of the 1994 most prestigious Fernando Award. Clyde was a great and caring man who made great contributions to the city of Los Angeles and to his community in the San Fernando Valley. He will be greatly missed by all who knew him, survived by his wife Nancy and 2 daughters, Pamela and Nancy. May Clyde Porter rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Any other adjourning motions, colleagues? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you all very much. This meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is adjourned. We will next be meeting this coming Friday, which is April the 21st, 2006. That meeting will be here at City Hall downtown at 10 a.m. Thank you very much.